ladies and gentlemen, this is a tiny editor's note before we start the episode. We've worked out that there is an issue with some of the recording, and from time to time you might hear a very audible pop. We have worked our best to try to remove that, but further attempts has just kind of withered away at the quality of the rest of the podcast. So we ask for your forgiveness for this episode, and we will do better in the next one. Now on to the episode. Hello everybody, let's exit to port. It is currently, at the time of recording, 12:58 on the 20th of February 2024. And it's not Central European summertime, but as far as I know, springtime is approaching further south in Europe, but looking at the amount of snow coming down outside, I will have about a metric ton to clear after I'm done with this recording. Someone who doesn't have to clear his own snow, Mr. Grumbles the Dwarf, is here today. Hello.
Hello. It's not snowing here at all. No, hasn't done for a little while. It was frosty a couple of days ago, but it's completely fine. So Europe is... we know nothing about Jon Snow.
I always think it's fun that there is, I think there's a journalist and news reporter in the BBC called Jon Snow. Mm-hmm. And as far as I know, his knowledge of different subjects is vast. Like, he knows a lot about different things, and I absolutely love the fact that people go around, you know nothing, Jon Snow, and he's like, actually... think you'll know that I have a lot of knowledge. I'm not sure how much his knowledge is about the topics that we will be talking about today, but before we jump in, I want to remind everybody that we do have a Patreon. $2 or euros a month, you can support us and be guaranteed to get a question in. And this month we have our first Patreon. And the question will be answered a bit later. Actually, it's a really good question that we're looking forward to talking a bit about. So, yes. Patreon.com/exit2port. Patreon.com/exit2port. You'll find the link down below. Mm-hmm. But without further ado, let's just jump straight into... some of our topics here, and we're going to start off in regards to Skull and Bones, because you've been playing that recently. I have not jumped on that, but there have been a lot of people playing it, and as far as I've understood, the actual full release has been something very different than what they've previously shown in betas and closed or not. Mm-hmm. Did you get into the beta?
No, I didn't. I played in the open beta, but I didn't play the previous closed one before that or any of the previous iterations over a few years or whatnot. I haven't been very close to the project. I just... I saw it. I looked at the high level stuff they had, and I thought that could be quite cool. Pirates, sailing ships, sounds fun. And yeah, I you kind of get used to things sometimes taking a while to cook, or sort of pretending to be one thing in a trailer and being very different afterwards. So I was kind of like, okay, I'm not going to get too sort of attached to this thing. And I had quite a few people in the community were very hyped for it, and I was like, no, I'm not sure if I get it. But so it was kind of like that. And then the open beta came along. I actually tried to play in the closed beta and wasn't one of the lucky few or whatever. And I actually was quite irritated by it at the time because it was one of those like, oh, just, you'll apply, everyone will get in kind of thing. They made it look like they were just gathering data but going to throw as many people at it as they could. And then that didn't turn out to be the case and I was annoyed because they kept sending emails of like, oh, making it sound like I was in, Anyway, fast forward to the open beta. I was like, I don't know if I really have time for this. I can't really be that bothered about it. And then classically Grumpy's like, oh, I really want to play this game. Do you want to play it? And I was like, all right, then if you're going to play it, I'll have a look at it. And I had a look at it and I was like, actually, this is quite a lot of fun. The very first impression was like, I don't know if I get this. The walking about part and all that wasn't really... It's all right, but it needs a lot more polish. And I thought, this is I don't know if this is ready to be released in a week or so. And then you go out on the boat and you essentially play as the boat. Is kind of more your character in the game as such. And you get into the arcade battles and you sail about on pretty good looking. It's not perfect, but like some pretty good looking scenery and effects and whatnot. And the sound design is pretty solid. And suddenly you're like, well, this is kind of a completely different game. This is like, it's almost the equivalent of like World of Warships if you just stayed in port for an hour just staring at stuff. You'd be like, okay, I don't get it. And then you go into a battle and you play and you think, oh, okay, now I get it.
Oh, really?
It's a bit like that. So you set sail and you just start having fun immediately. At the beginning, the tutorial kind of fairly straightforward, and you're kind of like, attacked by giant sharks leaping onto a little raft and stuff, and it's like, oh, it's kind of cool. It doesn't give you too much time to think, and off you go. So I've been very surprised, and then I was very fortunate enough because I hadn't applied to their creator program or anything. I don't have anything against Ubisoft. I've just never really been that drawn by their games and that style. So it's like, well, there's no point applying for every single creator program out there in the world just for the sake of it, sort of thing. So I kind of left it. And one of my streamer buddies got in and just came to me and was like, would you like a key? And I was like, I don't know. I'm playing the beta. It's quite fun. Maybe I'll give it a couple of days and to cool off and see if I still like it and that. And then they just sent me a key anyway. I was like, look, you're probably going to like this. It looked like you were enjoying the beta. And I was like, oh, thanks very much. So, that saved me whatever, 60 quid. So pretty happy with that. And then I played it for a few days and we sort of did some multiplayer with Who's Gaming Now and Cringer. And it was just, I don't know, just pretty easygoing arcade battles that are fun. And that's the key thing, is it's got that fun factor when you're in those. So as a game, like trying to isolate the component parts, like as a game, especially the ship part, it's pretty darn fun. And the other parts, like the walking around and the little clues and the maps and whatnot, that kind of backs it up nicely, gives you a bit of a break from just doing the sailing about. Even though I wouldn't regard that as a sort of polished final product kind of thing, which seems funny to say, with the price. And then the other component, if you look at the price and the classic kind of, is it worth it, or the worst question you ever get, is it any good? It's just, I always try to not answer the question in those terms because it's so subjective. But there's lots of fun to be had. The price is quite high. It is available along with a lot of their catalog if you take the monthly subscription thing, but of course that adds up over time as well. There is an 8-hour free trial on launch that anybody can take advantage of, which I think is brilliant. Go and get your 8 hours worth of it and see if you get hooked. Of course, the risk is you get hooked, but then you've got to be an adult and make your decision, But there's not that many games, I don't think, that come out and say, here's 8 hours of gameplay for free, like right up front at launch. And you can see if you get into it or not. I think that's pretty cool. And yeah, I've quite enjoyed it. I've kind of reached the point now where it's a bit in-gamey, waiting for the Battle Pass season thing with new enemies and new monsters and ships to come along. I'm really looking forward to see what they bring out and what the quality of all that, the brand new. It seems like the gut feeling I have is the very new content that's coming into it is high quality and well done. and some of the older stuff that's still kind of there feels a bit sort of fillerish. And the easiest example is the NPCs around the towns feel very like, you know, copy paste. Let's make sure the town doesn't look empty, but they don't feel like living PCs for the most part. The main characters, 1 or 2 or 3 that we've met, are well animated and well voice acted, very well voice acted and well scripted, and that's nice. And the little side quests, the investigation ones in particular, where you go around looking for clues and following maps and stuff like that, is actually quite well done. I quite enjoyed that. So it is a mixed bag. There's bits where you're like, ooh, that should be, you know, the UI is not as intuitive as it could be. Some of the way to understand and follow things or get into certain aspects of the game are a little bit lacking, and you have to rely heavily on other creators or other players that, you know, that can fill in the blanks for you. So I definitely think they've got a bit of a learning curve ahead of them there in terms of like how to make things more understandable, like off the bat. But yeah, the arcade stuff is fun enough that you can forgive some of the other aspects of it. If you and you know, my main advice still remains, if you're not sure about it or it just seems very pricey, just wait. There are going to be options to get discounts with Ubisoft points. If you're a long-term Ubisoft game player, after about 3 months from release, they're going to be offering up some discounts for Ubisoft points if you've got those collected up. And there'll be other kinds of sales. I wouldn't be surprised to see this go on sale on the various platforms in the, you know, not too distant future. Summer sales and that kind of thing. So, you know, if you're not sure or it's not comfortable, then wait. But that's my advice on any game. But this does happen to have quite a high price tag, I would say.
So I'd like to thank everyone for coming to the podcast. We've now rambled about Skull and Bones for about 13 minutes. No. It is... I don't know, man. I'm one of those people that is completely on the fence about this. Or I'm not even on the fence. I'm just kind of standing a bit away from the fence and looking at the fence and going, yeah, that's not a fence. Because there's as weird as it sounds, with my background from playing a lot of World of Warships and enjoying action games and so on, and enjoying cooperative games, I don't initially see the draw to Skull and Bones. Not even a tiny bit, because I don't see the cooperative nature in it. I know there's grouping and you can do stuff together, but I don't see the direct benefit of it. I've not seen enough of, is there progression in a way, like what's end game, like there's nothing that is obvious for me as a bystander that kind of grabs me and wants me to look more into it. And it's I think they're missing a trick there, because as I could probably enjoy it, and I think a lot of people could probably enjoy it, but I think they're missing a lot of like little tidbits here and there to just draw the rest of us in.
Yep, I agree with you. I had the same kind of reaction playing the beta. And, you know, again, it's not the same as being sponsored or anything in any way, shape or form, but at least getting the key for free, it doesn't put me under any obligations whatsoever other than saying thank you to the person that gave me the key. But I do feel that it doesn't feel like... It feels like it's in a big open beta like stage. Like it feels like the beta felt like, this is a good demo, cool, can't wait till they have an open beta for this, and the game release feels like the start of the open beta, except it's not. So they definitely... I agree with you. There's lots of areas that need some polish and maybe a little bit of detail, and certainly some guidance, or make things a little bit more easier to understand. And I think a lot will come, for me personally, a lot will come down to what they bring in the in the seasonal stuff, because and how whether how severely that's monetized or whatever. I can definitely feel that I've reached kind of like what the game has to offer at this stage, and the end game part about running your big business empire thing feels very like I get it, and it works okay in the game. There's a few things that need to be done better and better explained, but I'm left with it. I've found it quite funny to watch people going, "Yeah, I'm a pirate. Now let's go and run our big rum empire and all that," and basically becoming, the DMCs and whatever else. And you're like, the purpose for the pirates typically, the booty and the treasure and having a free life and all that, but it wasn't typically, as I see it anyway, about becoming that which they detested, the structure, the order, and the top-down kind of control. I don't think the goal of most pirates and people with that era was to become the next big company kind of thing. So it's a bit weird that that's kind of where the game takes you at the end, and I don't find that. I actually, funnily enough, I had a little, because I thought we'd talk about it a bit, I had a little look again this morning, logged on, and after about half an hour, 45 minutes, I was kind of like, yeah, okay, I'm done with that for today. I don't need to just repeat this over and over again. It's because it's, without doing it together with an audience and things, it's not that good. It's not that fun. So yeah, I agree with you.
Well, I know we'll touch a bit on Skull and Bones a bit later with a question from one of the viewers. But one of the, since you bring that up, how else could they transition the game from this initial pirating phase and so on into actually making it a full end game worthy game? What would end game pirate life be like if you don't have something to aim for, to try to set up, to try to grow an empire of some sorts? What would be an alternative?
So my take on it, and again, I'm not a games developer or that knowledgeable on all the psychology and all the rest of it. I'm just a player for the most part. I personally feel like and I think I think they have the possibility to do this, but they don't currently do it. I think, or I look at certain elements of the game where I draw a parallel to something like World of Warships, or that kind, a different kind of game like that, where I think, or this is a little bit like, this is how what I would like to see in the game, but I think it also would be good for the longevity of the game. I think that the game has a bit of a bit of confusion in that it can't work out, and this goes to your points about the co-op elements. It can't really work out, or it hasn't decided whether it's a single player game with a story or a multiplayer co-op game.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So it's definitely caught between those two kind of different directions. I feel like there's bits of the game that feel pretty solid, as like you would expect in a sort of single player game, or like a big world but with single player oriented stories. And then there's the co-op and the sort of grouping up together, where you can do quite a lot of things to help each other out, but they mostly revolve around either a fetch mission type thing or the combat stuff, which is not a criticism. It's just that's that niche, or that's that area and grouping of things you can do in the game, and then there's the other part that you kind of do for yourself.
Right.
And it doesn't feel like the two things mesh together that well. They're just both coexisting. They're not fighting each other per se, but you do kind of like, even when we were in a group a lot for hours and hours, it was a bit like, oh, what are you doing now? Oh, I'm doing this and this and this because that's what I want to forward progress with. And what am I doing? Oh, I'm doing this and this other thing. And it was moments where it was like, can anybody come and help me fight a thing? Because I'd like to do that as a group. I don't really need to, but it would be fun, and I'd like to see the scaling and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So you kind of had to trigger those multiplayer aspects to it. So there's definitely what I think would be great for the game would be, rather than focusing on an end game. I could be completely wrong, and this might be in a nutshell why I don't develop games and never should. But I'd like to see more of a I'd like to see more customization options, so that the roles of your ships at the different tiers, as it were, could be more definable and customizable by the player. So you have, for example, quite early on a healing ship with some nice passive heals for your allies, and then you have healing weaponry that you can put on any ship over time that you can also use. So you've got passive and active healing and support ship capabilities. I'd love to be able to say, okay, this other ship in like a mid-tier, I'd like to be able to make that my support ship, because I love the way the ship looks. I like the way I can customize it. I'd like to be able to say, well, can I change the like integral properties or traits of the ship? But at the moment, they're kind of locked in. So you've got this is your tank, this is your, so the ships are like characters in a sort of analogous way with things like Fortnite or something. So I think more customization so that people could play, and replay the tiers of ships or the missions and things and the different contents in a style that they prefer and that they would suit them. I think that would be good for the longevity, because I think they're always going to, and then what you do is you have your seasonal, here's a new big boss, here's a new big monster, here's a new type of ship or a bunch of new weaponry and stuff that we're bringing in each season. And you've got limited times to get hold of some of those things and whatnot. Yeah, so that'll work, I think, if they do it to a good quality. But currently, in between that, the rest of the endgame thing, running this whole pirate empire thing, where it just becomes basically just a time sink. You've got to go sail from here to here to get these things, to move those things to that thing. And if you do that in this amount of time and you don't get sunk, you're winning. And if you don't do that, well, you're not really losing, but you're missing out on all these, whatever, in-game credits and things like that. So that may or may not be. For me personally, I just tried a little bit of that this morning and I got confused. I didn't seem to be able to do anything to affect the battle that I was in, and I just thought, okay, that's very meh. I don't get it. So,
is it a product of, or is this a product of how long it's been in development and how many times it possibly has changed shape? As in, I imagine they've probably started out with wanting this to be more of a multiplayer Assassin's Creed Black Flag, where you have focus on the combat, but then they realized, oh, we need to have other things, and then, the group play is now lacking, so we need to add on this, but we need something that'll be longevity to it. Like, does it feel like it might have tried to encompass too many things at once?
I think so. It would be interesting to look like on a year for year basis or something, or even 6 monthly basis. What did their concept and their sort of big overarching, picture of this is how this hangs together? What did that look like, and how did that change over time? I think it'd be quite fascinating to take a look into that and see what the thinking and the direction was. It definitely feels like I would possibly 2 games and a mini game kind of plastered together, and it kind of works overall, because the one key element of being the ship and sailing and the atmosphere and the sound and the arcadey battles feels sufficiently rewarding and enjoyable. And it's kind of engrossing. It grabs your attention and it pulls you right into that moment. So that's fun enough that I think you don't worry too much about the other bits that don't quite fit together smoothly. It's a bit like running a car on you know, two of the correct tires and then maybe 2 tractor wheels that somebody's kind of bolted on or something. And it kind of runs and works, but you're leaning at a 30-degree angle and you got to be careful you don't spill your drink on yourself every time you turn a corner or something. You know, it's you know, that's a bit of a weird imagination thing, but like it just sort of works, but I think it also slightly gets away with some of those disjointed elements because the arcadey bit's fun enough and engaging enough, and it might not be the only thing people like, but I think for the majority it's good enough and fun enough that you gloss over some of the other elements, and that's where it always comes back. If you zoom back out again and you look at the big $60, $70 up to $100 depending on the edition kind of price tag, you're like, ooh, okay, maybe I need a little bit more than a band-aid holding these different components together. So we've got a lot, for me personally, as I said before, is going to depend on how well they do the season pass thing, what they ask for that, if anything, and how that's going to work. Because if that's quite expensive, you know, I'm not going to put any numbers on it, but if that's a buy-in, opt-in kind of thing, that's not going to be a good sign for me, because the game, if it comes out as a freebie or very low cost, then okay, and it comes out at good quality, then okay, the game's sort of being nicely rounded off, and you can feel that there's a commitment to making it a more polished product. If it comes out with a reasonably high price tag, or it comes out affordable but not very good quality, or not offering, you know, more than like another 10 hours content or something on top, then I might be a bit like, okay, maybe this time does need more time to cook, which again is ironic given it's just come out and how much it costs.
Well, historically, Ubisoft have not been fantastic with their pricing and how they do battle pass things, so or season pass things. So we'll see. We'll just have to see. It's guaranteed to be a returning thing we're going to be talking about, and yeah, for multiple reasons. It's one of those games that it has potential of a mainstay, but we'll just have to keep an eye on it and where they go with it, simply. But another game that keeps returning, for some strange reason, Vintage Story. Why?
Vintage Story, why? Vintage Story for me is predominantly a relaxing experience. We'll talk some of that later probably. And it just sets you up in this kind of early medieval kind of world, with a bit of sort of lore and things to be nervous about, and it just says go and survive, and you know, literally winter will kill you, so you've got to start thinking and acting and doing things to survive. And I like that challenge. It doesn't need to do too much or too many, throw any big flashy graphics or fancy things at you. It just says, here you are, good luck, mate. And you're like, well, I'm in the middle of a forest, or whatever, and then you run 10 meters and get eaten by a bear or something. But it's a game that is rewarding over time, because the more you learn and adapt to the world and think about what you could do, the more you realize, oh, okay, I can do this, and I can live in a hole in a hill if I want to, or I can build a great big castle, or anything in between. And it's a game that, definitely, one of my favorite descriptions of it was it's like Minecraft, but everything takes 11 or 13 steps to do. Like Minecraft dialed up to 11. And it's kind of funny, because I've not really played Minecraft, but I get the gist. It's like you have to go through many different hoops and steps to do things, and We've been adding some mods in that make it more and more that way, so people want more of that rather than less. So, but then at the same time, or as a result of that, it feels more rewarding when you actually achieve something, when you make your first pane of glass or your first metal tool or whatever it might be, or harvest your first crops or whatever, just in time before winter and that kind of thing. It feels like, wow, okay, it's subtle. There's no big pizzazz or fireworks don't go off. There's none of those gaming kind of rewards that happen. It's just your character's got some food. Your character isn't dying of cold. That kind of thing. So I think I think that's what appeals to me. It's the challenge, and it's somehow generally calming, with those odd exceptions of the moments where you run into some kind of trouble, or you go out mining or cave diving, and you haven't prepared properly. You didn't bring enough food or enough tools or whatever, and so little mishaps and things can happen as well. And then it's just millions of blocks across or whatever, so you've just got loads and loads of, I think stats were saying the world's like 1.3 times the size of Texas or something. So you've got a big wide world to go and explore, and there's all the different biomes and trees and animals, and yeah. So I think it's survival and it's a challenge, and it's up to you to then be creative and follow a path that you want to, whether you do that as a sort of character style, or if you are just literally playing the game and want to have an idea. Or I think it would look really nice if I made a pond with some fish in it, or a nice building or a farm or whatever you want to do. So I think it's that what keeps bringing me back to it.
So the eldritch horrors being spawned in, that's part of the relaxing nature.
I mean, so I think the fact that there's the existential threat of, like, will I have enough food? Will I survive? Will the wolves get me? That kind of thing is the one side. And then the fact that there is a kind of an ever-present threat in the background that comes in two forms: these little rifts that things can just spawn out of, or an actual temporal storm that can come from time to time, and they're just here, and even more stronger versions of these enemies will just appear anywhere they want to at night during the storm. So, and then there, thunder and lightning and all the other things. So it kind of keeps you on your toes. It reminds you that it's a survival game. Just when you think, okay, I've got a nice house, I've got food, I can do whatever I want. I can sit here and just make flower pots all day or whatever I want to do. And then, one of these storms hits or something, or you left the back door open because you weren't thinking, because it lulls you into this sense of, oh, I've got everything covered, it's fine. And then all of a sudden you're surrounded by bad guys or people that have been, infected by this weird drifter disease or whatever. So there's I like that because it's not in your face all the time, although you can ramp those settings up if you want to, if you like that kind of thing. So it's not a Project Zomboid of like, everything's fine, 3 hours later I lost a leg. 24 hours later, brains. So it's not that it's not gonna just murderize you unless you ramp it right up. It adds, and also one thing that I haven't been able to showcase recently because we've not got to that point because we're surviving year one and winter and all that kind of thing, but there is a whole lore and like lost cities and civilizations and things, and there's lots of books to find, there's musical collections to find and instruments and things, and these kind of gramophones to play stuff back on, and there's like teleportation devices. So it's like ancient lost civilization kind of thing going on under the ground too, and you have to go and put your brave pants on and go searching through all the caves and fighting all the drifters to try and find these things. And the good thing for me is I've played hours and hours of that game in different settings and servers, and I haven't ever got yet to the point where I've really fully seen all of that stuff. I've seen tiny smidges of it, old ruins and stuff, but I've never found like the big locations, and I've not got to the point of finding all the lore out yet either. So I think that's pretty that's something that I don't really go into a game aiming for that. I'm not really looking for the end. I'm looking for enjoying the journey, but I know that that's there in the back of my mind, and it's kind of fun that at some point I will have enough stability and preparedness to be able to go looking for those things, and I find and that's going to be a fun additional element to the game.
And that's not that, and that's just the vanilla game. Like, it's still moddable on top of that. So yeah, no, it's
we've added quite a lot of mods in the meantime because Stats has just gone mod crazy in a good way, and he's just researching them all and looking for the stability and what they add. So we've taken things like, instead of just finding peat and using peat as a fuel source, we've now got one that like lets you dry the peat out and has different values to it. And the same with the firewood. You can change your fuel sources and stuff, and there's stuff like, you know, you can powder the coal and all sorts of stuff. So it's something that already takes everything up to level 11, and then all the mods typically are designed to add, you could say complexity, but like detail, granularity to a lot of these things. So you can, you know, there's like hundreds more recipes added in now and stuff like that. So you can like the fishing, we're doing this thing with the fishing where you can just put like a line in the water and add hooks to it and some baits or some lures, and that'll help you to keep fed, you know, and can even catch a few fish in the winter if you're near a big enough water source and that kind of thing. So, and then the fish, when you gut them, you get fish meat, and then you get one of two types of eggs. Either you just get some fish eggs and you can cook them or just eat them raw, or you get some that are ovulated that you can throw back into the water, and that replenishes the fish supply in that area.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. Or alternatively, if you've gone to like the big lake over there, long trek, but you were desperate for food and all that, so for some good food, and so you brought that back and you bring the ovulated eggs, you might be able to populate your own, you know, salmon farm or whatever you want to do. So it's kind of got some neat aspects. That's some of this primitive survival mod that we've added in, and added some different tools in, and some different craftables and snares for catching rabbits and whatnot, and all that kind of thing. So there's really, as it was born out of being a mod from Minecraft originally, it's retained this kind of core mindset of like, this should be like moddable to the extreme.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Eldritch Horrors withstanding, it's definitely a game that I will be getting into at some point. I did try to get into the TLS one, but by the time I was able to join, you guys had moved on and doing other things, which kind of annoyed me because I had set everything up. I had a character. I was ready to go, and then there was nobody there.
Yeah,
I was like, oh, well, this is fun.
Yeah, that's I felt the similar kind of pinch at the time, because, you know, that's just the nature of it. Because we were running it like a small, lightweight RP server. There's different levels to which people commit and to a game, and then there's different levels to how people commit to roleplay within a game. And I'm of the ilk of like, oh, if I really like this thing and it gets its hooks into me, let's play this for 3 months and see where this goes. You know, really build up some stories, really build up some relationships, not only playing the game, but just living in this world. I want to do that every time. You know, same with Eco, Atlas, everything. Let's start with 3 months and see how we feel after 3 months. But a lot of people prefer, and this is not about criticism or whatever. A lot of people have had their fill of a certain game or in a certain environment setting after, you know, a small number of days or a week or 2 weeks. Some people just don't, you know, they need that variety. They need something else to escape with, and I totally get that and respect that. So that was just one of those where that was a server being run in a group that was, you know, led or by people that are more of the, okay, I can do this for a week, and if it's really fun, maybe 2 weeks, and then I need something else again.
We'll definitely touch on that a bit later, but I've seen that time and time again on different RP servers where the goals don't really line up. So And I'm not sure if that is because of the purpose of the server or because of how people want to play the game, but there's a mismatch, and then that just kind of ruins a bit. But we will definitely touch on that a bit later.
Yeah.
But one of the big things about Vintage Story and Minecraft in that is that you make your own side quests. The side quests is the main quest, so to speak. But I've been playing a lot of Starfield lately, and really enjoying that. And I'm starting to come to the idea and conclusion that there is such a thing as too many side quests. Yes, I know. It was as if a million voices cried out at the same time and then suddenly went silent. No, I think it has to do with how Starfield does the side quests.
Mm-hmm.
Right, like yesterday when I was playing, I was running around on a planet or in a city called Neon. For those familiar with Star Wars, it's like the Nar Shaddaa of Starfield. For those familiar with our world, it's like the Las Vegas of Starfield, where there's lights, like neon lights everywhere. There's drugs. There's crime. There's so many things being blasted at you. There's noises, voices, and commercials, and so much going on at the same time. That in itself is giving me a bit of an sensory overload. But there are so many side quests where I keep running back and forth, and because of how the game is designed, and partially they need to design it that way, that ends up with a lot of side quests that run too long. And it's not through the fault of how the side quests are designed, but rather how the game handles you going between areas. Because every time you enter a door, every time you go from one place to another, there's a tiny loading screen. And it's annoying. If I had the option of running from one side of the city to the other without having any loading screen, I wouldn't mind this. If I could travel between planets in the same solar system, or star system, not solar system. Solar system is ours. Anyway, I wouldn't mind. But every single time I go through an area where, let's say I take an elevator, instead of kind of hiding that by letting me stand in the elevator and look around for a bit, they show me an actual loading screen, and it takes away part of that freedom of movement, that freedom of walking around and doing your own thing, and it removes part of the flow of the game. And when you have a lot of those, when you pretty much have a game that thrives on side quests, because much like Skyrim, I don't think you can actually run out of side quests in Starfield.
Right.
Where you walk up to a random NPC and they'll mention somebody that this person needs help or so on. Or Sergeant Yumi in New Atlantis wants to talk to you again, and he wants you to do stuff over and over and over. Like it's a repeatable quest, or it's repeatable quests, I should say. But if I'm not allowed to open a fecking door without having a loading screen, it's gonna get to me. And I think that's been pushing me towards doing more and more main quest stuff lately. Because when you have a side quest chain that just goes on and on and on, and it's all about running back and forth across the city, and then because you run back and forth across the city and it takes you from the loaded chunk into another loaded chunk, into a third loaded chunk, into a fourth loaded chunk, that's 1, 2, 3 loading screens going one way, and then you have to run back. That's another 3 loading screens, if not more.
Yeah.
It's it gets to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I would love to see the game optimized more towards open areas. Like, I get why they have designed it that way, to load you into an area, to make it so that it's a less load on your PC while playing it, but I'm like, dudes, the loading screens is going to be the bane of this. So I'm still fully loving the game, but much like with Vintage Story and a few other games, I think I would need, and I know I need, mods for Starfield in order to enjoy it. Because another thing that would take you on some of these loading screen quests, to put it like that, is if you want to set up a base on a planet or a moon, to mine titanium, for instance. You will need to bring all the materials with you, land on a spot, build it up, but because of the limitation to your character, you would have to potentially go back and forth a few times, meaning you have a loading screen while you're jumping, and it's I think it's also one of those games that suffers for what is it they want to do with the game, right? Where is our main focus? Do we want to focus on being a multiplayer game? Do we want to focus on being a group game? Starfield, however, is do we want to focus on making the main story fantastic, and then we have a couple of side quests here and there?
Mm-hmm.
Do we want to be a space exploration game? Do we want to be a base builder game? Like, they have all these wonderful features, but I think they've taken in too many things, because not only can you build a base, you need to build your ship, you need to build your character towards different things, and when you have so many things happening at the same time, I honestly think that if they'd rather removed the base building element on planets, but instead have you focus on your ship and let the ship have the ability to mine, let the ship have the ability to be your main base as such in a much larger way, I think that would have been better. So, yeah, I don't know. I think it's going to be main quest stuff for me going forward.
I'm curious about that. How do you feel about the main quests and the story? Because that was one of the things that they build. I can see, like, I've not played it. I just had a quick look at the category. It always makes me curious when I look at Twitch, like at certain times of the day or whatever. These are non-peak times, but it's a good way for me to get a guideline and a feeling. And there's like currently 30 viewers for Starfield. 30.
Yeah. My Twitch results when it comes to Starfield shows me as the top streamer in the world when I go live with it. With my 25 to 30 to 50 viewers, all depending. But when it comes to the main story, I've I don't know how many hours I've played now, but I've barely started the main story.
Right. Okay.
And that is because of these long chains of side quests.
Right.
Which is both good and bad, I guess. It's a good game, but I feel like they would be better off having kind of a soft cap on side quests that lead you back to your main quest from time to time. Like once you're done with a certain side quest or a chain, then if you don't progress your main quest, then you won't be getting anything more out in the world. I think that would be a much better way of doing it. Because right now, okay, so quickly summed up, I woke up as a miner on a planet. I mined out a thing. I touched it. It gave me superpowers. Well, not superpowers, but it gave me special powers that ended up getting me recruited into the first group, which is the Constellation. They're explorers. Through that, I went exploring. And because I stabbed someone who was likely bad, my companion at the time reported me. So that I got picked up as a criminal. Because I got picked up as a criminal, the Navy recruited me as an undercover agent to be undercover with the pirates. So the Navy has me undercover with the pirates, aka the Crimson Fleet. The Crimson Fleet has sent me on its own quest chain. So I now have a quest chain with Constellation, I have a quest chain with the Navy, I have a quest chain with the pirates, and then I can be a city guard in Jemison, aka New Atlantis. I can be a vanguard with UC, aka the United Colonies. I can be a Freestar Ranger, which is another faction. And yeah, there are way too many of these. I kind of love that they're not restricting you, but at the same time, some sort of limitation that as long as I'm doing my Vanguard playthrough or on an active quest with Vanguard, I should not be able to do something for the others. I feel like there should be some sort of restriction there. But at the same time, I've also absolutely loved it with my brain just kind of going, okay, you know what? Today we're going to go build a base, and tomorrow we'll be a pirate, and then, do whatever. It's good that way, but it I suppose can be it's
difficult,
much.
Trying to tread this line carefully between being all things to all people, which is, I think, one of the sort of design goals or whatever that they tried to achieve, and then maybe not having enough focus at times as well, making it difficult to focus. Yeah.
Oh,
interesting. Okay, I'm just curious because there was so much hype about that game, and now it's like everyone's forgotten it. Not everyone, but like just for exaggerating for comic effect. But like, oh, okay, no, it's weird that things can drop away. Like, I kind of like, I'm always thinking, and I know it's not necessarily a fair comparison because there's also the online and the whole roleplay community, but like, I always look at Red Dead as like, for me, the gold standard or whatever, and I'm not trying to compare it like direct, one-to-one, because they're different games doing different things, but looking at individual components and elements of a game, and that one, like the story, I never had that feeling ever of like, oh, it's annoying, I've got to go and do this thing or whatever. And I think the way that Red Dead seemed to do it was there was a degree of openness. You could go off and do little things, but there was also, you'd go to a certain area and you'd have a certain plot line or a certain bit of story that would come in, and then we might load into that. But then you were in that setting and doing that particular mission, and everything you needed or that was relevant to it was kind of loaded in and part of that world. So you still had that freedom of movement and you could approach things in different ways, but it was all part of that particular chunk that you'd loaded in. And I think that added to a sense of immersion and continuity that sounds like is not there with Starfield because of the way they've done their chunks and the loadings and stuff.
Yeah, I don't know what the technical limitations are in each of their engines and so on, but of course, Red Dead being on one planet, one plane, and a certain part of the map at any given moment, it allows you more freedom. But I don't know if Starfield could do that if they wanted to, but I don't know.
Maybe that's one of the big differences. I think you've hit a good point there for sure. Because one thing with Red Dead I always thought is, why is there not another 2 or 3 chunks like this?
Yeah.
Or, But anyway, I was just curious what the main story was like, because maybe I'm missing something with it or whatnot.
So story-wise, it grabs you. It has something to tell. It's always fun to listen to the NPCs and what they say, and there is definitely good moments out there. Getting to know your companion, that's usually part of the main quest. Or even if you want to have your companion, sometimes you're forced to bring someone along with you because of a quest chain. But so the dialogue is there, and is it Oscar worthy? No, but it's part of a game, and they have their own story to tell. So it's it's going to be interesting to see when I focus a bit more on what is set to be the main story. Like, is it too short? Is it too long? Who knows? I'll report back when I know more.
Yeah. I'll try and catch them if you're doing main story stuff. I'm just curious, like, what you think of it and how it flows. Now that you're the world's premier Starfield streamer,
apparently. But things to keep an eye on. Speaking of Nightingale, this has completely blindsided me. I'll be honest. Maybe because I haven't really been looking for new games for a long time. I haven't really been looking for anything new. But what? Where? What? Because I suddenly saw this and I'm like, whoa, what's this?
Yeah. It's funny because I agree with you. I've been sort of keeping half an eye on it, but I think that it's a mixture of things. One of them being there's been so many things vying for attention. Like, it's funny because, like, historically February has always been a big release thing, but I think that for various reasons over the last few years, with a few other minor inconveniences that have struck the world, obviously tongue-in-cheek there, but also things like, writers' strikes and creative backlogs and all these kind of things. I felt like this year, when I went into this year, I was like, oh, February should be all right. We're playing Eco early, so hopefully that'll go on. And Eco went in a weird direction because of the whole culture war thing that people decided to turn it into civilization. So, and then I was kind of like, okay, well, that's fine. Then what's the next things that are coming up? And I can sneak a few of my own personal favorites in, like Vintage Story. But then suddenly February just kind of exploded with all sorts of things, some that I've got caught up in and others not so much. But I feel like with Nightingale, because we've just had like Enshrouded, which in itself kind of got gazumped a week before with this Power World thing, which I didn't get into. That doesn't interest me, that one. I've never been a Pokemon kind of person, but that took the world's attention for a couple of weeks, and then the Enshrouded one popped up, and that was like good fun and very. It's weird because I almost want to go back and play it some more, but it's like this thing only just came out, but now I've already got the next thing and the next thing. Then Skull and Bones kind of broadsided me, and now we're going into this week with Nightingale. So Nightingale looks. I think there would be way more buzz about Nightingale if there wasn't all the other, I suppose it's fairly obvious, but it's the first time I feel like I'm caught in the middle, like in the eye of the storm. Like all around me, there's loads of things going on, and it's like I just want to focus and put some energy into Nightingale, but it's like, oh look, there's this thing going on in Skull and Bones over here, and there's Enshrouded still going on over there, and all these, all the other stuff. It's so. I hope it's going to be really, really good fun. But I had to watch the trailer again this morning to remind myself because I'm supposed to be playing it tomorrow and Thursday, or at least tomorrow. Yeah. And I'm like, if people said to me, "You can play this Nightingale thing," I'd be like, "Yeah." And like, "You excited about it?" "Yeah." Like, "What for?" I don't know. Let me watch the trailer again to remember why. So, and I was watching it, and it was like things. I was like, "Oh, that's really cool," and this is really cool. And I was like, I've seen this before somewhere, and it's oh yeah, when I watched the trailer for this a few months ago. So, it looks like it's basically calamitous situation and conditions have affected the world, and then parallel Fey worlds, dimensions or whatever open up and become accessible, and mankind, it's got its chance to survive by entering into these realms, but some of them are a lot more dangerous than others, and we've got to try and find somewhere safe to live and rebuild and learn about what's gone wrong and how to use new magics and technologies and stuff. And then there's a bunch of different characters and a really cool looking character creation system in the game by the looks of it, and then different sort of levels of magic and difficulty and stuff that you can opt for. And then you've got these world cards where you can influence either the world you're in by playing some of these cards into specific devices in that world, or you can go through a portal to another world, and as you're getting that ready, you can influence the generation of that new world by choosing a different type of biome for it, or choosing, whether it's more or less dangerous and stuff like that, based on items that you've either created yourself or discovered by just sort of treasure hunting around the world and trying to survive. And then it's got the whole building, crafting kind of thing to it. So it's kind of high fantasy, fey type worlds with dimensional travel, and it's set in a sort of, or the humans are coming from a sort of Victorian age, and it's sort of steampunk-ish elements to it. And then you've got an umbrella that acts like a Fortnite parachute or something, and you can kind of fly around all over the map with it. And then you've got guns and swords and axes and hammers, but also like magical charms and spells you can cast and stuff like that. And the one really cool thing I saw that I'm very excited is they got this thing where you can you might find like a tree stump and things are like dying in a particular world or an area, and you can use magic to kind of like heal it and encourage the tree to grow back. And then it kind of magically turns back into a tree that you can then, I don't know, chop down, kill, murder again or something, or just have in your garden. And so that looks pretty cool. And the building system looks pretty cool. And we had a community member who'd played a little bit of their stress test they did recently and said it was like really fun, really immersive, and the building system was amazing. So kind of looking forward to it, but I'm also kind of like, I've only just gotten over Enshrouded. And now the next one's there already, and it's, sometimes it's nice to have a mixture, but I do love survival games. I do like sort of fey fantasy stuff and steampunk stuff I like as well. So I'm hoping it's going to be a good one. And it's up to, oh God, I think it was 6 players.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Together, in co-op, or you can play solo and you get a companion, or you can have a companion. There's different kinds of companions and you can level them up. So it'll be like, one will be like a doctor, one of them will be like a tank that will go into battle for you if you want to stay at range and that kind of thing. And they will help you. They can even pick you up in battle if you get knocked down and stuff like that. So that looks like a fun aspect. And I've always enjoyed having companions in a game if you're playing a bit of solo. So it's all soloable, but it's also multiplayer co-op encouraged kind of thing. So it's all PvE, and there's different world bosses, and I kind of like this idea. Theoretically, there's like lots, I don't know what the numbers are, but there's lots of these different cards that you can make or find, and you can, because you're putting up to three in combination to make the next dimension you jump into or go through the portal to. So in theory, there's loads and loads of different combinations, and therefore you'll be generating, no 2 playthroughs should be the same kind of thing.
Right, okay.
So if that holds up to the promise, then that could be very, very fun both to play and for viewers, because it would be really nice to say, oh, I've been to this world, so-and-so was in this world yesterday. And it's like, no, they weren't. It's like, what do you mean? Well, I've played this card in this world. So this is the similar world to what they had, except there's a big bad evil somewhere and things like that. So I think that's that's a nice way to influence and allow the player to have some agency in like what's going to unfold next. I like that.
Again, another game to kind of keep an eye on going forward, to see where they're going with it, and if like how's it going to grab the Twitch audience? How's it going to grab the gamers themselves?
Yeah.
So yeah, no, like
I'm a bit worried with the timing. Right,
Yeah.
to be honest, I'm a bit worried with the timing because a lot of people are still in the old Skull and Bones. Although weeks gone by, so people will also be looking for the next shiny thing. But also because the Skull and Bones are gonna in a couple of days bring their first season online as well. So
Right.
what's that gonna do? How's that gonna split things? But there's more than enough people. But you want to kind of. It's also, even for us as players and as streamers, it's kind of like, but I want to kind of do the thing and look at the thing and see the new thing. And so I don't know whether Nightingale's going to be like a day or two and like, okay, we've seen that's cool and we can come back to it a bit. Or is it going to really grab us? We've also got Sons of the Forest lined up for their full release. And they've had a lot of changes and patches, and I'm hoping that they have enhanced the story at the end of that, because the story at the end of that was amazing and like a little bit kind of like mind-blowing, like, oh, I didn't see that coming at all. So I'm looking forward to and hoping that they've expanded on that, because that was exciting. But yeah, just the usual problem, too many things, man. Too many things. I do want to say this is a little anecdote, but hopefully a nice segue into the next section, which is I've been trying and I'm still waiting on a key for Nightingale, because it gets difficult and I can't, I choose to spend money towards charities and things. I don't want to spend it all on games. Sorry, games industry. So that probably cuts me off a lot of sponsorships. Anyway, So I've been trying, and I've been in touch with this one guy, and it's the same guy that Cringe has been emailing with as well. This is a guy called Enrique. So he is representing, this game, and so I mailed him. I was like, it'd be really cool. Myself and some friends are looking to stream together, and yada 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 like that. So they come back saying, oh, that's cool. Look, there's this form. Can you fill out this form? So I had a look at this form, and it's all like first name and all these details. And you're like, I don't really see why I need to do all of that. So, but they can also just link it to your Twitch. So I did all of that. And then I went back to them saying, okay, I've done all of that. What do you think? And this is to try and like shorten this as much as possible. It's like little emails back and forth, like, hi, thanks very much. Can you do this? Or, hi, it's great to hear you'd be interested in this. I really like to do this. So you go, okay, well then can you send me a key then, please? Thanks very much. These weird little semi-conversations going on, like half a sentence at a time. And then the guy's like, well, fill this stuff in. So I filled the stuff in. And then the next day he came back and I was getting my daily email from Enrique. I was getting an email back saying, hey, Grumbles, we'd be really interested if you wanted to stream our game Nightingale. But it was one of those form like copy pasta kind of like, boom, this is about the game, this is a video you can use, here's your press kit kind of thing, right? We'd look forward to hearing from you or whatever if you're interested. So I went back to them going, hi Enrique, thanks for your latest email. Are you able to send me the key now, because you've just sent me this email? And then he replied back, right, instead of something which I was expecting, like, oh, you're on the list or whatever because of the process. He came back saying, could you please fill in this form? And I was like, hold on a minute. So I went back to him and I was like, oh, I've already done that. That's cool. Hopefully that's all processed and ready to go, without, I'm not being too cheeky and asking every single email or anything. And he just came back saying, oh, thanks very much. That's great. So I keep getting these emails. So I've had these like half a dozen emails back and forth with this guy, and the net result is I'm sitting here 4 hours from their launch thinking, hopefully, I've been trying to tell everybody we're going to play this game together. And you know how hard it is to coordinate and play stuff together, right? We're going through that ourselves for different reasons. And it's like, all I need is like a yes or no. But I'm having this little dance. And then the best thing was I got in on this like first early from the three of us wanting to play. Yeah. And then Cringe, we're having our DMs this morning, and Cringe comes back saying, well, I got my key, but it's not opening up until 6 o'clock or whatever. It's like, I didn't. I'm like, how the hell did you get a key already? Like, it's like, because the best thing was that Cringe was like, yeah, I emailed them telling them I'm not gonna I told Enrique I'm not filling no forms out or anything. You can just put me on your list or not. I don't. Either way, whatever.
Yeah.
And then he ends up getting the key first. The one guy that was being stubborn and not filling the forms out. So, yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add that anecdote in because I thought it was funny and it was a bit of a link to the next.
Speaking of just sitting and waiting.
Yep.
Yeah, this is going to be just a very short story from the world of gaming that it caught my attention as I was scrolling through some stories on Instagram or TikTok, I can't remember. And this Australian creator pretty much made it to the top rank in the current Fortnite season by not doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean he ran around not shooting people. No. I mean he leapt out of the battle bus down to the ground, and wherever he landed, like he tried landing in a tree or on top of a building or something like that, but wherever he landed, he sat still for the remainder of that battle.
Right.
And already from the first battle, just by not doing anything, like not even moving, he made it to gold 1. and that's already there. It's fairly high up. I think he would have done worse if he tried to go out there and kill people. So, gold 1 from the first battle of not doing anything. 381 battles later of not doing anything, he is now whatever the top ranking thing is in Fortnite,
Right.
not touching anything. And I'm like, how is this a good system? Like, holy crap.
It'd be funny, wouldn't it? Like if a year down the line or a month down the line, it's just hundreds and hundreds of people. The whole Fortnite category is just like a live feed on a webcam somewhere. It's just no one moving. And the fun for the chat is basically sitting there having popcorn together, and then somebody spots some other player walking around in the background playing the game normally, but they don't spot the they don't spot the player that's got the webcam on. It'd be pretty funny.
Yeah, because this is another thing. He is a creator. He streamed these battles.
Oh my god.
Of him sitting there staring at the screen, talking to chat by all means. But I'm like, how something is flawed in your game if that is something you're able to do.
How's it not penalized? Because we're basically like AFKing or whatever.
Yeah,
right? So...
and not only that, but it's a single player game, so you're not even on a team with somebody being carried in. Like if somebody AFK'd every single battle in World of Warships in ranked, they would not make it to the top rank. They would be banned for AFKing, right?
Yeah.
And quite quickly too. But no. In this so-called competitive game, that's
esports
all.
Ready.
Yeah, esports ready. And I just kind of laughed and shook my head and thought, yeah, good going. And all I can think about is, like, because he's a fairly large creator too, just by sitting there not playing a game, what kind of costs has he brought upon Twitch? And that's gonna be my segue into content creation, because I'm not gonna worry too much about him. But not long ago, Pirate Software, who is a fantastic creator, started showcasing a bit more about what it's like to be a creator, what the costs are for Twitch, and so on, what it's like to be a dev. And he has been an actual dev for Blizzard and worked in IT security for many years. Like he knows his shit. He he brought up a calculator showing the cost of running a stream for Twitch, and I've been playing around with it, and like let's have a look at low latency streaming, standard quality, 1080p, 5 hours of streamed content. Let's say I have an average of 75 viewers for 50% of the stream, right? And my closest region is Europe. That brings the cost of my stream to $37.
Mm-hmm.
And that means that anytime I do not make $60 or more through subs or something, Twitch is losing money on me. That's with 75 viewers that are there 50% of the time. Then we can look at people like, let's do Co-Carnage, who has lately been streaming to an absolute insane amount of people. I think yesterday when I watched him, his average was 8,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
And they were there for about 90% of the stream. That means that 5-hour stream that Co did for 8,000 people on average, like it could fluctuate, would cost Twitch $4,882. That's a lot of subs. That's a lot of bits. And that's just one of the few costs. That is just the direct video stream. That's not even taking into cost for all the other things they need to think about. And it's becoming clearer and clearer to me why Twitch are pushing more and more towards ads and other monetizations. But I'm still thinking there has to be a better way than just pushing ads. But yeah, if anybody wants to check out and kind of play around with that, I'll leave the link in the description down below, because it's kind of eye-opening. It is honestly kind of eye-opening to what goes on behind the curtain. So yeah, and because both me and you, we are aware of some of the hidden costs of IT. It's not just the personnel. It's not just the hosting service. It's all of these license costs. It's the content delivery network that you need to rent, and so on and so forth. There are so many hidden costs. So when you looked at this calculator, what is your initial thought?
Well, I think the first thought I had after a couple of moments was just like exactly as you were just alluding to, like, and what about the rest of the costs?
Yeah.
You know, maintaining all the video. There's too many things. Yeah, it's interesting, and obviously one thing that is difficult is when you only get like little snapshot insights into certain elements, because it does definitely shine a bit of a light and leave it fairly easy to guess and estimate why it's so difficult for them. I don't know, man. That the big business, it kind of, I always find it a little bit mind-blowing, having sort of lived a life in IT, to look at Twitch as a service and see what they're doing all the time, 24/7 around the world. You know, all the different languages, all the different rules and terms of service and regulation, like different legal jurisdictions with different subsets of rules and whatnot, and where they do host from. And where was it? Was it South Korea recently, or somewhere that they decided that I think it was there, that the costs of networking and everything there were so exorbitant that they just estimate they would never, or calculate they would never be able to turn a profit there ever,
Yeah, I
no
think it
matter
was
what
South
they
Korea.
do.
Yeah.
So they just said, we're closing down shop there. We're just
Yeah.
not hosting and running services there. So, I mean, and that's like a massive market as well. And it's a huge technology-oriented country as well. So, yeah, if you can't make a profit in the home of Samsung, with all the investment that goes on there as well, it really does, make you raise an eyebrow and ask questions of other places and whatnot. So I think that it's, I guess what you kind of need more competition and more, I think a healthy level of competition in the space. And it makes me curious how other companies out there are doing it. Are they not suffering the same pain because they have a different starting point or a different infrastructure to work on a different cost base, or are like all the companies out there like kind of in air quotes losing money? I mean, there's an element of it where you look at something like Google and YouTube where, I mean, I don't want to go too much into that topic, but I suspect a lot of them lose money, if not all of them, if they had a true like total cost of ownership and real transparent, and they had to actually cover their own costs, because a lot of industries and a lot of companies don't cover all of their own costs. They either have government subsidies or someone else in the background, like with Twitch, Amazon obviously in the background and stuff like that. So there's a lot of internal books and sort of like funny money. We used to do it even in the financial institution I used to work at. There was like the real money and then the internal bookkeeping of how this is how things are cross-charged and everything, internal cost allocations and stuff, and every company goes through that. But it was so much like smoke and mirrors, partly because I'm not a finance head, but also because it literally was just kind of layering and complexity for various bookkeeping reasons and stuff. I'm not saying it's not legal or anything, but it's like it feels very veiled in mists and smoke and mirrors. So that ultimately the companies behind the platform, not necessarily the platforms themselves, but the companies behind them, they're getting people's data and other things that are more valuable, even worth taking a loss for. So I'm always curious about the whole line of like playing the crying fiddle and like, we've got to turn a profit and all the rest of it. How much of that is real and how much of that is just, also trying to appease or appeal to people and get people to invest more in the platform on top. So I'll never know the answers to those, I don't think, unless there's like the equivalent, like a Twitch files kind of a thing. But we all know what typically happens to people that try to expose the truth and show the reality of contracts and things. They I don't want to say anything political, but I really want to wish. I'll say this. I really hope that somebody who is incarcerated on more or less whistleblowing and trumped up charges, I hope that they get a fair hearing this week, and all the best to them is what I'll say. So
agreed.
Getting back to the main topic, I don't know if they'll ever turn a profit in a genuine full total cost of ownership transparent way. So what they're really trying to do is make sure they don't hemorrhage too much money all over the shop whilst bringing in enough to kind of cover those costs. And ultimately they'll be measured on certain metrics. And, the next thing will be, well, how long is Dan Clancy there? Because did he do enough to stop the bleeding? And therefore, because what have they done? They've lowered payouts overall with like international currency adjustments, right? They've gotten rid of certain elements of services that were costing them more money and just in one simple way, certain services and elements that they could just switch off. They have gotten massively into bed with advertising and taken all sorts of measures and terms of service updates and legal moves and all sorts of stuff to appease and appeal to those advertisers more and more. And they have
Quickly on that note, I want to say I'm seeing more and more diverse ads from Norway. I'm not just seeing one ad repeated. I'm seeing more and more different ads, which is interesting to see.
Yeah.
Because that is weird for me to be online and see actual Norwegian brands on Twitch. So they're doing big things there.
Yeah. You know what's interesting for me is I get this mishmash of English ads, American ads, and lately, and also on YouTube as well, adverts about just German companies and services, but they're running their ads in English. And it's really, that one's kind of like, that's odd to me, but I guess they're going for the whole, the broader language use and whatever, so they're going in that path. But it's still obviously the majority are in German language and stuff. But it's really curious to me to see more and more German services offering their stuff up in the English language. Very curious about that. It's kind of odd for me. I'm like, hang on, where am I again?
That could be a simple product of internationalization of like more and more people living abroad or being nomads or so on, but still needing to reach a market. For instance, for me, when I travel to Germany, I speak German by all means, but it would be easier for me to grab a hold of what a company does if they advertise to me in English. So I think that's going to be part of it. But they're doing big things with that, and not only what ads, but how they show ads. Like this lower third ad or below the stream ad that we've mentioned, I see more and more of those. I genuinely want Twitch, like, for as much shit that I give them from time to time, and for as angry as I am I'm not angry, but disappointed that I am at Twitch, I still want to see them succeed, and I need to give them credit for how much work they do in the background to keep afloat, to keep running, to keep going with what they have as a service. It is impressive. Knowing, like we've already talked about, knowing some of these costs in the background, it is impressive. It truly is. And they keep giving us more. They do. Sometimes they misstep, but recently they've actually thrown more animated emote slots at me than I can shake a stick at. Like I'm still looking at so many open emote slots, and I'm like, what do I even put here? I've asked my community, what emotes do you want? I have some suggestions. I need to fill them, but that's still just going to be 2 or 3 more out of the 13 other they gave me. I'm like, okay, let's animate random emotes, shall we? That's where I'm at. And like,
it's funny because I kind of slept on it for the same reason, because I was a bit overwhelmed by it. And Lanavar was like, look at all these slots, let's go. And I'm like, wibble. So I kind of sat on it for a bit, and then I just thought, okay, let's have a look at the easy animate and what they've done, because they've added a few more options in there.
Yeah, they forgot to mention that, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that wasn't clear. So I was like, well, what am I going to do with all these slots? That's going to cost a fortune if I ask for proper animated emotes. They're gorgeous, but it's like, wow. And I'd love to send more work to the animators I work with, or the artists I work with. But it's like, literally, if it's $30 to $35 or whatever an emote, you do the math. Thanks for the free 15 slots. Are you going to give me... Oh, and thanks for the slightly reduced payouts. Great. Thanks for screwing me so that I can't run, a longer extra minute of ads unless I do that within the hour and ruin my viewing experience, etc., etc. So on the one hand, you hamstring me. On the other hand, you go, well, if you can do this 10-meter dash... in record time with your feet tied together, you can have this. Oh, by the way, you have to spend a lot more money to do that too.
Yeah.
So so I sat on it a little bit, feeling a little bit confused by it all, and then I just thought, okay, let's sit down and have a look at this last week on my days off, and I went through and I just used the easy animate, and they actually have some really nice options, and one of my favorite ones, the simplest one, is Giggle, and it's just like a little gentle animation, like up and down, but not too much, not too angry shake kind of thing.
Yeah.
And if you have, like I have, like a lol replacement, then you've got the Giggle for that, and it's just perfect. And now I've got that, and I love using that. So you can do instead of the Grumbles lol, you can do Grumbles lol a. I just put an a at the end for all the animated emotes, make it easy for people to type, and it's really worth it, because having the little emote just going like that in the chat, it's not too distracting for the streamer. Generally, I find, some animated emotes are like, oh my god, get that off my screen, but most aren't. But sometimes you run into some that are a bit over the top. And then what I did is I also put that on my Mare Bear Tonk one that I made, the little GIF, the little PNG myself, and so he sits there on his tonk, and it's just sort of doing this little vibration up and down, so it looks like he's trundling along, or just the vibration of the engine and all that. So I definitely would encourage you to have a look at taking some of your existing emotes, and even if it feels a bit cheesy, like, oh, but you've got this emote already. Some people like the animations, and some people like the statics. It's just, so I would definitely encourage you to look at that. My tip is have a look at the Giggle one. And I didn't overuse that. I just double checked. I was like, well, I don't want like 15 giggles, but there's a bunch of different ones. And there's another one that I use for my well met, my like raising the hand saying hello or whatever.
Yeah.
Or I use the hands up in chat, where it's called arrive, and they have like an arrive and a leaving or whatever. And it just starts off very tiny and just rushes up to the front, like, so he walks up holding his hand up like, hi, like that, like somebody coming at you, waving at you from the distance or whatever. Yeah. I think that's pretty cool. So yeah, definitely 100% check out, before you spend any money or too much time worrying about new emotes, have a look at some of the easy animate stuff to start with, and that might just tide you over and take some of the pressure off, because then you can say, well, I'd like to do this and this extra emote, but when I've got the time and the money, or when I have the creative energy to draw something myself, or whatever you want to do.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely be looking at that, because I've seen some of these easy animate things go on, and they're great. Honestly, they are. So I'm definitely gonna have a look at that. I just need to find which of my emotes fit some of these.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's it's one of those plights that you get as a content creator. You kind of sit there, and then suddenly the thought is, oh great, more emote slots, and then about 30 seconds later, oh god, more emote slots. How am I going to fill these in a good way? But we'll get there. We'll get there. It's but it's very nice of Twitch to actually do this, because they could easily say, nope, we're not doing that. And I think the only thing that I want to say regarding Twitch and emotes right now, please allow me the ability to filter out the global hype emotes, or rename them, pretty please. Because if I type the word hype as part of an emote, I get all of the Twitch hype train emotes, and it's a bit too many right now. They like allow me the Twitch what's it called? I have my tags, you have your Grumbles.
The abbreviation or whatever.
The abbreviation.
Yeah.
Allow me a Twitch abbreviation, maybe, to mark that, okay, this is the global emote for Twitch. That way, when I type just hype, I'll get the ones that I have normally. But if I want global,
I used to use the favorites for the emotes, but then at some point they just trashed them all and they went away again.
Yep.
And I was like, Well, that was great. That was a waste of my time then, because at least then when you would start typing something in, you'd see one with a little star next to it.
Yeah.
So at least you go, oh, that's the one I always use. So you'd be able to click that. Now I just don't bother updating it anymore because it feels like they're just going to disappear on me again. So
yeah. Speaking of disappearing, there are probably going to be a few authors and audiobook readers that are going to be disappearing from Spotify. Spotify is being naughty. And not just a tiny bit. They're being very naughty. The thing is that Laura Horowitz, who's a narrator on for a lot of audiobooks, she does everything from spicy stuff to documentaries and so on. Like, she does a lot. And she recently put out a TikTok talking about what Spotify are doing, and it's kind of scary. It's kind of scary. Which, I'll be honest, I don't know if I want to host our podcast there anymore because of this. In short, like, I'll leave a link to the TikTok in the description, but in short, if you post your audiobook on Spotify, or if you have narrated an audiobook, and like if both if you're an author or a narrator, the new clause that Spotify are enacting through find a way with voices or something, like there's a service that's intermingled there. They pretty much own your voice and all your stuff, your intellectual property and so on, in perpetuity, and can do whatever the fuck they want with it.
That's not good.
No, that is not good at all, and I do hope they see some major backlash for it, because, oh my god, when I heard what she had to say about that, and when she read through that clause, I was like, dudes, Spotify, no, that's not okay. That's just such a major overstep that it's insane.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm not surprised, but it's also still very, very disturbing that they try to get away with something like that. And probably for the large part, they're thinking, well, most people aren't going to read this stuff anyway. So kudos to whoever's bringing that up. And shining a light on it, because these are the kind of things that creep in there, and before you know it, you as you said, you've kind of lost your rights to everything, or you've been usurped and thrown on the scrap heap because the computer can do it all and more. It's all part of this ongoing huge thing with the mixture of censorship and AI.
Yep.
It's very, very troubling. I think the reality is that if not already, then quite soon in our lifetimes, we're going to be faced with literally the first question for every single thing you see will be, is this real or not? Not just see, but hear and all that stuff. And it's going to be very, very hard to work out what is and isn't real. And that can work in two ways. One, nefarious people, faking things, like and the world reacting as it does typically. Instantly without any thought of its own or whatever, and due diligence. And two, on the other side of it, people getting away with stuff because people will be like, well, that's probably fake.
Mm-hmm.
But it's actually real and horrific. So it's scary times we live in. I guess every generation and every person that's lived has probably at some point when they switch their brain on had that kind of thought. But it's really I think the scale and the rate of change is what's terrifying, because it can change almost instantly and it can happen globally, and that puts it into a dimension that, like, our brains even those of us that live in the internet age are not wired to fully comprehend and process that. It's hard to really understand and process something that just happened in, you know, XYZ other place in the world or whatever, or something that just happened to 100,000 people somewhere and things like that. It's really, really hard to get a grasp on that. And now we're talking about the realms of billions, like everybody. Not a fan of things like that at all. And, you know, I think some of it's a mixture of some, you know, the super scary stuff at the top of the chains of all these things that's actually being, you know, conspired about and put together deliberately as part of big plans and things and manipulation. And then there's the bits of the rest of the process underneath that is all people just trying to go about doing their job and use technology. And, you know, they're not trying to, I doubt the person writing the code is thinking, whoa, this will be great. But,
yeah.
you know, and even the lawyers putting the paperwork together, because when you're in a system like that, you think that stuff is all normal. You typically, most people are not going out there to get each other or whatnot. You're just acting within a system that is designed to make all of this stuff feel very normal, ordinary, nothing to see here kind of thing. And more and more so these days, the really scary part of it is that it is very Orwellian kind of reaching the point of censorship where you can't even challenge these things, because if you're challenging it, you're an idiot, you don't understand it, or you're stuck in your ways, or you're trying to block progress, or, you know, insert whatever response here. But we're reaching the point now where people won't even engage and have a dialogue anymore, regardless of whether they agree or disagree on something, because it's easier to do the whole cancel culture or just shut people down or claim that they don't understand or something. And if that fails, then, you know, you go into full-on attack mode. So whilst we're only talking about this very specific clause in a Spotify context, it, for me, correlates or connects to a bigger, broader issue that's going on all around us every day. And
it's definitely tied to like it's definitely tied to AI. It's definitely tied to the creation of books and voices, digital voices, to be used and to secure the rights to that. So there's definitely that. And with recent developments, like even within just the last 2 weeks, there's been more developments in the creation of a video that is believable, and it doesn't have those AI blips or weird things going on with it anymore. And it has sadly already claimed its first life because of somebody using it nefariously. It's going to be important to be on top of our game here. Like it's gotten that bad that I recently saw something on TikTok where I was like, this sounds. This just is this even real? Like, this can't be real. And then I discarded it for a bit, and then I went, you know what? No, I'm gonna go Google this. I'm gonna go look further into this, and then it turned out to be true. And I was like, holy shit! The fact that I was even thinking that this might not be real made me discard the news, and it was a very important story. So then I could then spread the word about it, but it was like, oh my god. That was frightening to me. Normally, I'm pretty good at picking up that, but no, that was that.
Yep.
Yeah. No, it scared me. And it's clear that we're heading towards that. And the exit port next year will be fully AI. No, it won't. It will not. I refuse. I refuse to be replaced by a robot. But I, for
Don't
one,
worry,
welcome our
Robert. He
robot
doesn't mean
overlords.
you.
Yeah. No, he can say. I love him. He's good. He provides me content in different ways. But yeah. Other than the upcoming apocalypse of robots and our overlords, where we will need to know your role. Then yeah, there's that. We need to know our role.
Yep.
Know your role this time around involves our first Patreon submitted question.
Yeah.
Or it was submitted on Discord, but it is our first patron. Thank you so much, Mari, for doing that. That is incredibly nice of you.
Mm-hmm.
And we would love to have more of you in there, because we actually did a tiny bit of thinking in the editorial meeting about what we want to do with that. And rest assured, if we're not able to cover an answer in the main episode, we will release stuff to you directly on Patreon where you can listen to it there and get your stuff answered there. But we will try as much as we can going forward to always answer it in the main episode. But Mari asks, how would a community RP server look like if Grumbles and Tiger set it up? So what game, premise, wishes, etc., and then what would we choose and kind of go for? And one thing I know for sure is that something that I would want is to have a larger goal, making it either community driven, so that multiple people need to contribute their little part for something bigger, or have this kind of, okay, which community can complete this task best? Like, split it into two. But it would be, for me, it would have to be something that is slowly built up, where it's not everybody does everything. So kind of like in the eco mindset, where you choose what you want to do, and then you do that to help the others around you. So you would have a fisherman catching fish, giving that to the cook, who cooks and creates food, and then gives that to the restaurant owner, who provides food for the community, and then kind of the touching base for what do people want, what food do they like. So you can then send out people to do their own thing, and then this restaurant could then be the gathering point for the community, where you have these RP events, but there's still a larger goal out there, and it would have to be slow burn. It would have to be cooperative. I'm not one for too much like, I'm not conflict driven when it comes to these things, to put it like that. So but I love the thought of having to kind of opposing villages in a game, but like it's not necessarily that they are directly at war or anything, or at odds, but they have separate things that they do and do well. And there will need to be some sort of trade, so you'd have to have tradespeople doing their thing. So it's, I don't know, this is just spitballing for me, but I know I want something where you might not be logging in to do a job, but you have your role, you know?
Yep.
So that's kind of the outline for me. What was your first thought?
A lot of overlap with that, for sure. I think that's what I'm always striving for, I'm always looking for is, and I think this is in part why it's so difficult, is something that I guess subtly, or it probably has a mixture of like overt and more covert elements to it, but something that draws people in and gives them a sort of living environment and makes it as easy as possible for people to immerse themselves, as into the role of their character, and that in tune with what you were saying, that the character has a purpose and an existence there. And I think that what I would strive for, and this is something I give a lot of thought to, because thinking from sort of GMing or DMing and running an environment, and why I don't run one at the moment, because I'm almost overwhelmed by the scale and the scope of what I would want to do. I really want to, and it's gonna sound funny, but I've been learning a bit about Tolkien, not the content, but the man and what he did and how it all came together. Because I've never really looked into that or known anything about it, and I've been very much enjoying Lord of the Rings of late, thematically and in terms of its depth and breadth. And I'm curious, like, how did one mind kind of come up with a lot of that and tie it all together? So it's been fascinating to read and listen and to some video and audio of and articles around Tolkien and how that came about. And I'm looking for something that is and sorry, just to add to that, also Peter Jackson and some of the people involved in the films and how they did that as well, and that's fascinating to learn about. What I want to achieve, and whether I get to be a part of something like that ever, I don't know. That sounds quite dramatic, but it's not for dramatic effect. That's genuinely how I feel now. Is, if Tolkien took whatever it is, 13, 14 years, right, to do his Lord of the Rings to culmination, is when you think of that, okay, we have technology and we have like worlds and things created for us and everything, and I'm not talking about like writing my own game or anything like that. It'd be far beyond the scope or capability and reality. But I'm looking for a setting that people, and some of this is about the mindset and what people kind of, I'm actually hesitant to say words like sign up to, because thinking back to the previous topic and AI and legalese and where this, but I mean sign up to in a kind of spirit of the word kind of meaning. But I want people to, and I'm realizing that it's not as easy as saying to people, we're just going to live in this world and do this thing together, because that's kind of the approach I've tried a couple of times, and it doesn't usually work out as in the way I expect. Sometimes it's brilliant and really surprises me, but a lot of the time it's and again, I'm trying to be very deliberate and very careful and slow with my words. There's no criticism, but it doesn't live up to what I imagine in my mind could happen or was going to happen. And what I mean by that is I'm not saying that I achieved this either. This is not patting myself on the back at all. In fact, I struggle, and I'm a very harsh critic of myself in this regard. I'm looking to live in whatever that world and setting is as that character, and have that character really live and breathe and feel and be as alive as I can possibly make it, the video game avatar. And so I have to say, by the way, while I take a breath, I really love this question, but I'm also thinking, okay, let's not make this a 15-hour podcast. So I hope that I can be as succinct as possible. So that's kind of what I'm always looking for, always striving for, is and I put pressure on myself in this regard, and that's why I'm having a little break from role-playing at the moment, because believe it or not, you can actually build it up so much in your mind that you feel like you're letting yourself down or not achieving those specific goals or aims even before you've even started. It's a bit of a vicious cycle you can get into that I feel a little bit trapped in at the moment. I want it to be escapist, because escapism's quintessential to this for me. but in a way that you immerse yourself and you escape into that world. You literally disappear and become part of that. And as Peter Jackson put it in regards to his Lord of the Rings films, they took the approach of, rather than saying, oh, this is all high fantasy, they took the approach of an understanding and a good understanding, I think, of Tolkien's work and sort of philosophy and approach to it is, this is historical. Now, it might be exaggerated, but it's more mythological and based in a possible realm of realities that might have happened thousands of years ago in the old lore of England and Europe and stuff like that. So the idea then and the approach they took was, this is more of a retelling of some very ancient historical events, rather than there's lots of flashy wizard spells going off and all of this kind of stuff. So, and I think that when you know, and like as I do now, that was the approach they took, you can see that reflected in the way the film is put together, the cinematography, the language that's used, and it feels very believable. And I think that they did a magical thing, especially as well, obviously getting everybody together and saying, we're going to go and live in New Zealand for 18 months and do these 3 films together, possibly never to be repeated ever again. So it's quite the feat, and obviously was based on an incredible lore and content as a foundation, so which they kind of lived up to and held in such high regard. So that's kind of what I'm looking for in like, when you take the vintage story, obviously that's not what we're doing with this current server. This was just born out of, I want to chill for a couple of days, so I'll make this VS single player, and then we just morphed it into a server, and we've got our little characters. But in that world, I would love, and this probably overlaps slightly into something that's coming up later from Moley about what game features would you like to see. I kind of want to be, and Enshrouded, I think was an interesting take on some of this stuff. Is Enshrouded felt a little bit like, to me, like you could be the dungeon master, like you could go around this world, mold this world, terraform it, build houses, build places, put notes and books and artifacts and things. And we did this, Lanavar and I did a little bit of this in Valheim way back in the day. I'd love the idea of creating and crafting a world that people can actually, stumble upon. Like you're digging a mine because you need some copper, and as you're digging, you stumble upon a box, and in that box is a whole bunch of old scrolls, and these scrolls tell a little bit of a story, but not a lot, which is actually in Vintage Story. It's part of their lore and part of what's in the game. But imagine taking that creatively to like the next levels and saying that there's a whole, multiple civilizations and worlds or deep mystical or mythical creatures or magic and stuff, and then being able to realize that in the game setting. I think that would be a good way, going back to where I started. I hope I'm tying these things together. Which is, I'm looking for a way that doesn't force or railroad the player into being part of that world, which is obviously a lot of what a lot of video games do, because that's their setting, that's their world, that's their lore, but kind of more gently guides them, and it becomes, like second nature to want to know more and to feel that you're living in that world and that there's a purpose to being there. As you described it, I think very eloquently with the, you're the fisherman, so that's what you do. Because the opposite, or what tends to happen a lot, is that everybody goes and does their own bit of everything. And and I do that too, and I get frustrated with myself. It's like, why am I making all the things? I don't want to be the weaponsmith. I want to be the guy that needs the weapon because he's going adventuring. That kind of thing. But sometimes you just like, well, that comes down to timing and how well the game facilitates being able to rely on one another. So, relying on one another is sort of what would you say, like an interpersonal skill and something you practice and get experience with and whatnot. And it doesn't always come naturally, or and maybe another way of putting it is, a game often teases the opposite out of you. It teases you into, well, if you just had this sword, you could go into this area and get this thing. but not having that sword and so, and this is where the immersion dies, because so who's playing the weaponsmith isn't around for a couple of days because they're away for the weekend. So I'll just make the sword and then I can go and do this adventure I want to do, and what I want is a world that, and a server and a group of players that are kind of so immersed and so bought into it that they wouldn't do that, because they could do it as a player, but their character wouldn't be able to make a very good sword.
Yeah.
So they would wait, and it doesn't. And it's not that Jim, who's playing the weaponsmith, is away for the weekend, celebrating his anniversary or whatever. It's because, Bronzadoodle, his character, the weaponsmith, has gone to visit his relatives on the other side of Mount Hujimaflip. And that's a 15-day trek, and he won't be back,
Yeah.
For another 17 days or something like that, so that you stay in character, and I know that I'm asking for like 18 months living and working together in New Zealand to make Lord of the Rings. But that's like what I want. And
yeah,
then it's a case of dialing that back and saying, okay, what can we achieve here?
But the immersive nature of it is definitely something that I would want to see. But still with the opportunity and the option of saying, not just outright asking what button is this, but the ability to, kind of like we did in Stats' summer vacation, where there's it was this wonderful, weird, and fantastic mix between meta but also immersive roleplay too, because you had non-role players there living in the world doing their thing, but you also had a lot of us immersive role players, and it worked. It somehow worked really well, because you had this community that had their own things that they were doing, and everybody had their own little projects, but at the same time, it somehow worked towards a bigger thing. And it was weird. But I think with just adding a tiny bit more purpose to said village will allow for people to stay in the role despite someone having to be away for a few days. Because then you can go, okay, well, I'll keep doing my job and prepare for other things that might come further down the line. It's not like life stops just because the blacksmith is out. So it would have to be a world where you have your role, but you have so many options, like building your own side quests, kind of thing. Because the main quest has to wait. That's how simple it is. Sometimes you're not prepared to go on the main quest. And sometimes the main quest takes an unexpected turn. Yeah, the Norwegians discovered oil. Well, would you look at that? Let's go drill for oil then, because we might. Who knows what we'll find out? It's a silly example, but yeah, definitely some sort of immersion into it would have to be there. But with a larger overhanging purpose to the world.
Yeah.
And then that, like, the journey towards that creates the other stories. It creates the other things that you find out in the world. But I think one thing you would have to have is some sort of game master or dungeon master that could be in this world somehow, and then pick up on these stories, pick up on these. Oh, what do you think we're going to find in that cave? You think we're going to find treasure or wherever, and then go in and do something to create those smaller stories. Like, give Ernie a reason to have a speakeasy, you know? Why was pineapples banned? You know?
I don't know why you had to go with that particular example, but sure.
You know very well why I had to go with that particular example. But that's the thing, like, creating those little stories where people get their own purpose, and then through that it tells very, very many other smaller stories out there. Because no, I would love to have some sort of ability there, and I think maybe as a general setting, eco would be like a technical setting, I should say. Eco would probably be one of the better for it, if people also allow themselves to just forget about the meta. But I can also easily see stuff like Vintage Story working because of the modability to it. You know, just how far you can create tech trees almost with that, and you can definitely give people plenty of purpose to work in a world without necessarily it being part of a main story or whatever. But they still have a purpose. They need to work. They need to do their thing. So the Vintage Story could definitely work too.
Exactly. I think if somebody out there mods, like you got the old ruins and stuff like that, if somebody modded in like some, and there is actually one that does better ruins or something. I need to point that out to stats. I don't know if you've seen that one, or maybe it's not compatible with the latest version. But so, because then you get a little bit more detail, you get better sort of buildings that are crafted, generated, and you get some better loot and things. And there's all sorts of things like that. I mean, we've already got things where you can like tame and ride a horse and make saddles, and there's so many different things. What you need there is, it's like we talked about earlier with the whole, you were ready to join, had your character idea and all that thing, and then everyone just buggered off. That's that kind of commitment thing. We need to say, okay, we'll just do this for like, say, a month. Right? Because I used to think, or still do think, 3 months is a good block of time, because it allows you to have that preamble, that week or two that everybody, myself included, needs to just get into the character and slide into the world and see how that world is sort of impressioning that character and affecting them. And then you have that kind of finding yourself kind of moment in the beginning, finding the character, finding how they fit in the world and what's going on for them. And then you have a month where you're meeting other characters and getting to know about them and how the world's affecting them and how you interact with one another and form your alliances and allegiances or not. And then you've got the, right now it's go time. So for me, it's always that, I always hope that eco is going to be like 6 weeks or something, because I want to get through that preamble. I want to then get through the 2 or 3 weeks getting to know everyone and building up a little bit and helping each other. And then I want to have the whole, now we live here. Let's see what happens in the next month kind of thing. So it's been, apart from Atlas, it's been very hard to achieve. And even for Atlas, it's been hard to achieve because, unfortunately, due to technical issues and the way the developers hate their product and hate everybody who's having fun with their product. So, it's sad, but that's the closest I think we've come to having that kind of immersive thing. I agree with you as well. While you were talking, some loose thought I had, it's kind of what Lanavar and I were doing with the Valheim, where Lanavar effectively started to become the dungeon master, and he started creating like families and histories and books for us to find and stories and things, but the game didn't offer all of that. So we had things like a lore section in the Discord where it's like, if you find this box, check section 2 and there'll be a lore drop in there for you and that kind of thing. So it's still nicely done and immersive, and it was kind of just it was cool because he would go off and spend a few quiet hours when no one was on and just make a place, and then I'd log on and he'd be like, look, I've made this castle over here, let's go and have a look at it. And it was just awesome because he was actually practicing building ruins rather than like, here's a castle that's just empty. He was like, this is obviously a castle that's been long forgotten and damaged and overrun. So we'd go and find some stuff in there. It was pretty cool. So, but I was thinking about extending that and saying, actually have somebody who is the GM for a specific session or season and have them be a little bit like Stats' idea with the Wizards, but obviously Stats wanted to play as well. And the problem is that you can't really play and be the GM. You can, but you won't have the same level of immersion because you know all the stuff, or a lot of the stuff.
Yeah.
What you don't know, though, that's still good and surprising is what the other players do with that and where they go with it. So you can still have fun, but you're probably having like 90% of the fun and not all of it. But imagine having somebody who was a GM and then they could be invisible and fly around the map and just see what's going on and have new story ideas and sprinkle some stuff in based on what the players are putting down and what's coming out in the role play together, rather than purely having one person who's got all the pressure to generate all the ideas and all the storylines themselves. So they could have a lighter touch when there's a lot being generated by the characters living in the world, and then a slightly heavier touch and more guiding touch when that kind of died down or people got to a bit of a dead end.
I think Conan allows you to actually have an invisible god entity avatar where you can fly around with it and still see people, hear people, interact with them without them knowing that you're there. So, having someone who is the GM or dungeon master or whatever you want to call them, storyteller, I think that would be the very little extra that something like that needs. That just kind of makes it go from this is a cool place to be to ooh, what's gonna happen next? Where's the next adventure going to take us? So yeah, no, I think having a GM would be really cool. But in that, I think it could also be nice to almost have it be regulated in that people roll, like almost D&D style, roll for what am I doing? What is my purpose here? Who am I going to be? Am I going to be the big brawny blacksmith, or am I going to be the wizard, or it's that thing, like almost figure out, like, let's say it's set in eco. You have a parameter, like the different jobs that people can have and what they can go for. Okay, so then all right, okay, we're rolling. Are you going to be a fisher, hunter, a mayor, whatever? What is your role? And then you play from that. And then if that doesn't work out for you, well, okay, let's do a reroll then, or something like. There would of course be a dynamic there to allow you to escape that if it turned out to be absolute crap.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing, though. I think that's one of the key components to it, and that's what we were both alluding to earlier is the level of commitment.
Yeah.
So we're talking about a magical scenario where suddenly 20 people that we know would buy into this and do this to that sort of level, who were willing and committed and were able to make that commitment, barring things they can't control, and sort of, and then what we would put in that world to make that happen. But I agree. I mean, I've D&D was something I came to late on in life, relatively, and only about like 7-8 years ago, and it's made a huge difference in my life because it's opened up a creative avenue that I didn't even realize that I was missing. But as soon as it opened up, I was like, oh my goodness, I should have been doing this all my life. It would have been great. So yeah, that's why I kind of referred a little bit to Enshrouded as well. And it's not the only one, but Enshrouded is one of the games that has come the closest to giving me the feeling of you could, because it's up to 16 players as well, you could build 2 or 3 parties in there. And you could have a sort of GM, like you could use the lore of the world and kind of expand on it a little bit. And you could say, do a weekly thing, and every Sunday we roll for adventure or whatever. Yeah, insert someone else's copyrighted name here. And you go for it, and you say, okay, this group calling themselves the the filthy thieves or whatever are going to go and attack their mission this week, or their quest that they're on is to, go and attack the sun temple of the north or something, and something a little bit, maybe some light story or some background to that quest that the GM gives them, but also maybe they've been on in the background setting up some traps, setting up some treasure chests, setting up some dead ends, spawning in a dragon somewhere underground that wouldn't be expected to be there and stuff like that, and then just seeing how the adventures go about it. And essentially bringing a D&D game into a digital world would be kind of what you're looking for, and then you could either do that on a session, but I think that's more realistic and achievable on a kind of a session by session basis. And then if that worked out well and you found people that had a lot of fun with that, then you could go and say, okay, now what if we took this to the next level?
Yeah.
And we took a week and said, we're going to, for 7 days, we're going to do this, and in this style, but then we're going to see where 7 days takes us. Because I want it to get to the point where it's like, oh my goodness, on day 2 or 3, thank goodness there's a tavern here and we can stop and have a rest and play some cards and tell some jokes. Because one of my bugbears in RP settings in games is often, where's the point where people stop and have a bit of downtime?
Yeah.
They're always doing something, and it's usually something mechanical. I'm making a thing. I'm going somewhere to get a resource, or this. And it's like, when do you ever stop? What's the point where you sit down and just read a book?
So,
where your character is exhausted. You're killing them.
Viva La Dirt League actually put out something about this recently, where they were playing D&D, and one of them went, "Have we ever pooped?" And then that became a whole thing about how, and it got a bit awkward by all means, but it was like, hold on. Yeah, there's a lot going on every single time. When do, because you always say, oh yeah, we're going to have a grab something to eat or so on, but there's something about telling the little stories, not necessarily about going to the toilet, but yes, like you're saying, the act of relaxing with a book, or essentially one of these, what is an anime called, a beach episode, where people go to the beach, they enjoy a day, that's it. There's nothing more to the story, to the episode, but they have a day of just living their life.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah,
and I think. I think it might be important to have some of those, but for a lot of people, I think they're just implied when you roleplay. That okay, now it's been downtime for your character. Nobody really talks about it, but everybody's thinking, oh yeah, then I've just been relaxing or training or whatever. But but it's sometimes important to fill that gap, like give it a gap, a purpose, because or else you are going to make your character go insane. So yeah. It's like you say with Tolkien and such, he had however many years to build this world, and I think that's why I love D&D or these role-playing games. It's the world building takes time, and the longer you're in it, the more lore you're going to build up, the more interest you're going to build up, the more the familiar names are going to pop up, where an innkeeper mentions somebody and it's a previous character, and then suddenly somebody perks their ears up. It doesn't have to lead you on an adventure, but it's a mention to something that you've been a part of, and it's recognizable. It's bigger than just your current character, and yeah, it's always fun to be part of something like that. So yeah, it's it would have to be it would have to be a bit of a commitment from people if we were to set something like this up. This is, of course, complete and utter what is best case scenario that we could get out of something like that. So, I don't know. Maybe we'll be able to do something like that at some point. Who knows?
Maybe.
Who knows? But if we're going to carry on from that into other community contributions. And the first one being from TCFreer. Talking a bit about how Helldivers 2 has arrived on the scene as if by drop pod, taking the world by storm, unifying console, PC, and others. Like even the whole Sony versus Microsoft with Xbox and PlayStation fight has calmed down because players want to play together and have fun. I've played this game a tiny bit together with Jurek, Dante, and LC, and my god, this game is fantastic. It's action packed. It's full of lore. It's so full of humor. It gives you a sense of purpose with your Helldiver. You know, because it's not just a static game that you go in and play one-on-one map. No, you actually have an effect on the world. If you manage to beat the mission, then that helps stabilize the region where you did this mission, and so on. But this is nothing super new in gaming. What these devs are doing, however, and these devs are no slouches. They are the minds behind Helldivers 1, of course, but also they are the minds behind Magicka. If I don't know if you're familiar with Magicka.
I know the name Magicka. I wouldn't say I'm familiar with it, but I had never heard of Helldivers before.
Yeah, so Magicka, you go in as a group of wizards. You pretty much have freedom of whatever you want to do with your spells. So, combining water with fire, you get steam, of course. If somebody's wet, do not use lightning on them or near them because they'll just get fried, and so on and so forth. It's a fabulously fun game. So many hours.
I remember it actually, yeah, years ago, yeah.
And they made Magicka 2, of course, and now they've arrived on the scene with Helldivers 2. What is truly amazing about how they're doing stuff is, yeah, they have battle passes. They will have seasonal content and so on. But what they're saying and what they're doing is anything that is purchasable in a battle pass now will forever be available. No matter when you start joining. Like, let's say you start now and you grind through a battle pass, and your friend picks up the game 3 months from now, they will still have that battle pass and that gear available to pick up. They will not have to buy the battle pass. Like, everything is available with in-game credits. You can earn it in-game, or you can choose to use your money on it. And it will never go away. Like, it will always be available to be earned. I think that's fantastic. That means you have been given a I'm not going to say AAA, but a fantastically fleshed out game with plenty of content from the get-go that they're going to add on to with more seasons, more battle passes, and so on, but they're not going to time gate it for you. I love that.
Yeah,
and
that's
I
good.
think this is a huge win. This is such a huge win. Like, this is amazing. Like, there's no FOMO. There's nothing like that. It's just simply, oh, you want to purchase it? Well, then you can purchase it. There you go. Oh, you want to grind it out in game? Oh, then you can grind it out in game. There you go. Your friend joining 3 months later? Yeah, he can still do that if he wants to. It's fabulous.
That's cool.
Let's have more of that from devs, honestly. And like, I'm just thinking of a game that's been very familiar to all of us, most likely, World of Warships. Some of the things that I would love to see more of is these metal grinds that you did for like Yamamoto Isoroku. That gave you the Shinonome, I think it is. And these other captains that you could grind for.
Mm-hmm.
That aren't time gated. They aren't like, they're a fairly good bonus, and anyone joining later on can get it. I would love to see more of that in World of Warships and other similar games. Like, why should I have a certain bonus just because I play the game at a certain point in time? Think about that. So then my question is to you, Grumbles. What other games would you love to see this mechanic be brought into?
Now you've put me on the spot.
Yeah, I know. Because, like, for me, the simple answer is any game that does seasonal or technically time-gated content. You know?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, yeah, a good example would be Conan, for example, where they've introduced their Battle Pass thing in the last year or so, and there's definitely a FOMO element to it, and there's also... So, on the one hand, I applaud them because their Battle Pass thing, you can earn the coins back and reinvest them in the next one. So, if you put the time in, and there's a fair bit of time, but if you do that, you can essentially have bought the Battle Pass once, and then just it's kind of rolling for free each time afterwards. Free as in your time. I think that's kind of cool that they did that. Some of the rewards are a bit meh, but one of the things that's frustrating is that there's certain items, for example, a lovely big old dead tree placeable that they had. What a surprise, it's a decor item. And yeah, it's just come and gone. Now, what they do is they have their bazaar, their in-game store, and suddenly rotate things in and out of there. But where they get you with the store is, in my humble opinion, everything is overpriced in there. Like everything. So, you know, you can argue that one all day long, but in my opinion, the prices are too high for the limited amount of content you get. But that might be the only way I could ever get hold of that specific item, for example, if that ever comes back in. And it's also rotating in and out, so you don't know what's going to be up next week or the next few days' time and all that kind of thing. So they've kind of done it in a very irritating way overall. And I agree with you, the time gating thing. So there's only one thing where I think there is maybe a category which is a kind of loyalty, longevity. If you've stuck with a game for a year, if you've stuck with, like we do with subscriber badges, for example, where you recognize and appreciate and give somebody something to reflect the support that they've put in for you. I don't have a problem with that kind of thing, because simply if somebody's put 3 years effort in their lifetime, in their hobby or whatever, into something, even if it's a game, and they get something out of that, a certain, bit of flair or whatever, especially if it's something that doesn't have a mechanical impact and benefit, or at least if it's mechanical, then it has to have equivalents that you can earn for free in game whenever you start later on. I don't have a problem with that. I like kind of loyalty badges and show off, I got the beginner's outfit or the founder's outfit or whatever. I think that's kind of cool. Like having the beta player flag in World of Warships as an example, right? But other than that, I think that I would like to see all games offering, I know pretty much all games that have any kind of way of adding content in over time like that. It would be nice to give people those opportunities, because, really on a psychological level, it builds additional loyalty to specific games, products, brands, or whatever. The more you can feel connected with them, and the more you feel you can influence them. Obviously, some things are just simply not programmed or not made in that way, because they can't be, or they don't want to be. They're meant to stand in their own right, and that's cool. But I do think that as more and more games offer this additional sort of content, and this additional flair, or give people a chance to express themselves the way they want to with a different coloured outfit or whatever it may be, I think that the more you lock those things away, the more negative impact that has to your game longer term. It might work short term. You might get more people buying into something. That's obviously the business condition that they're trying to weigh up. If we lock this behind this particular method of payment, will people buy into that, yes or no?
It's like the Helldivers devs have said, we want to earn the right to monetize our game. And I love that statement. They will work hard, they will produce stuff, and then maybe they'll introduce the paid DLCs or so on. If the community feels, okay, yeah, we've done well. This is something they deserve. And I would love to see that sort of attitude from more devs. We will earn the right to monetize our game through delivering well, like, especially if it's a game you pay for from the start. You know,
that's going to be like the key thing. Like, is how well do they live up to that?
Yeah.
So I definitely applaud them for taking that attitude and having that as one of their design and delivery philosophies. Then the litmus test is, okay, in 6 months' time, what does it look like now? Have they implemented a store and it's not true, or is it still very much? But if you can, and that's another thing I really do like, is if you can reward people fairly, and that's difficult to calculate maybe, but if you can reward people fairly with the opportunity to earn things in the game, then I'm all for that. I think that's something that, again, it's all about creating loyalty to your product by giving people fun and the opportunity to advance or to make customizations that they feel that they feel an attachment to, without having to drag their wallet out of their pocket every single time. I think that's a good philosophy and a good general approach to these things. If and if your game is good enough, then it should stand up to the test of time on that basis. Of course, that also depends what was their financial circumstance. How are they funded? Who's putting pressure on them?
Yeah.
And so on and so forth. And a lot of game development is just not done in conditions that make that viable. I don't want to make a direct comparison, but is an anecdotal kind of loose element from which I noticed in Skull and Bones. Skull and Bones has both earnable in-game currencies and non-earnable currencies that you'd have to pay for, and they have a lot of cosmetics and things that are limited in that you get to mix and match the hat and the coat and the clothes and whatever, but you don't get to decide if there's a green and yellow striped pants. You can't color them up yourself, that kind of thing, right? So you're choosing, but you're choosing from a pre-given catalog kind of thing. Now, one of the good things they've done is part of the end game system allows you to earn the currency to spend in game to get a lot of those things unlocked, and I think that's pretty cool. In fact, I think that's very cool. I also noticed that they have an in-game store, and when you go into that store, you can buy a lot of there's another currency that you have to buy. But you can buy some of these things, to obviously help your progression. And again, all power to people if they can afford to. But they have a bundle for one of their currencies, and I don't know all the details, so I'm happy to be corrected or whatever. But there's one that says, like, and with a discount sticker on it and all these, the usual made-up prices kind of thing, right? Get this because it's 10% off. It's like, no, that's just the price you've set. So, but anyway, they've got this one, and it says, best value in the store. It's at the far right-hand end of the list, so you can imagine what that means. And basically, you can get a ton of, like, beneficial currency stuff or whatever, and it's another $60. And I'm like, you've just charged people $60 to $100 for this game. And
then
there's
you charge
lots
them
and lots of
further.
in-game content, but also there's a store offering them the best value deal for another $60. And I'm like, holy bonobos, Batman. So again, I forgive my ignorance because I just closed that page pretty quickly when I saw that. But I didn't really look into like exactly what's in there and that, and it might, but we already talked about that game to death. I'd just say, to go back to the positive point you're talking about, there's obviously some preferable ways of doing these things and some less preferable ways of doing things. So, yeah, kudos to them. And whatever the circumstances that they're working to, I hope that maybe what that does is it gets other developers to pay attention and maybe reach out and say, how are you sort of managing to do this? How, what's what kind of model are you working to? What's your financing scheme? Or I always hope that people will share those kind of information with each other so that they can be inspired and find ways to make that kind of thing possible.
Well, hopefully that and other things going on in the world can change a bit in the gaming market, because there are significant changes going on. There's no doubt about how influential the Chinese market is on the gaming world. And recently, the Chinese government has banned any sort of gacha mechanic in games. Like you said, purchase this amount of virtual credits, it's 10% off. No, that's banned. Any sort of rolling linked account thing where you log in X amount of days, you get this, banned. All of those classic gacha mechanics have been banned from China, and this is again Pirate Software talking about it, but I know there's going to be others out there. I think he mentioned it took away $80 billion in revenue from the two biggest companies in China. Like that. Like, snap of fingers, that's gone. And this kind of rolls into the comment in question from Moleytov, because Moleytov said, Skull and Bones seems to have a mix of features that arguably should be in every game. Optional anonymization of player details, both for your own and other players on separate toggles, and missing some fairly as obvious ones, such as single HUD hiding, single key HUD hiding, screenshots, cinematic mode, and so on. And then he says, are there any features that you think should be almost universal across the industry, or are there any specifically that you look for when playing games? And I want to say, first and foremost, I really don't like any sort of gacha mechanic. Like, that already turns me off, even if it's free to play. I understand why it's there. I know I don't have to pay attention to it, but ultimately it creates a FOMO kind of feel, and I don't like that in a game. That's not directly a game mechanic or such, but yeah, that immediately turns me off. Yeah. Now, to turn that around, however, to say, what do I want to see? I want to see, if there's any sort of monetization, I want to see it reasonably priced, with stuff that adds fun customizations. Let me have a shiny helmet on my weird character or whatever. Doesn't need to do anything, it just needs to look cool.
What she said?
Yeah, something like that. And
okay.
and I want that sort of monetization. If you're gonna monetize, make it nothing that breaks progression for anyone. And of course, anything that allows me to show off my character, emotes, ways of kind of sailing around, or a photo mode. I love a game with a good photo mode. You know, Generation Zero has a fantastic photo mode. Hunter Call of the Wild has one. I do believe, the Angler had one. Starfield has a fantastic one. And I would love to have something like that in any game that allows me to almost create my own fan art of my own character instantly through the game. You know, it takes a picture and then I can use it as a poster or my background. Like, don't make it easy to access or to access these things so that I can accessorize my own environment. That's something that I love to see.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm not sure there's something that I look for in any and all games. That's a bit too wide. Any quick thoughts on that? Because I know we're running out of time.
Yeah, exactly. So, my brief answers. I mean, I agree with your points on all that mechanical and purchases and stuff like that fully, and kudos to China for cracking down on that. What the features, similar to what you've stated, having photo modes becoming more and more prevalent, I think is a really cool thing. Having the ability to hide, like completely hide all the HUD elements, like all mechanical elements, is something that I wish more games would do. Funnily enough, World of Warships does it pretty well, and I believe you can also achieve that in War Thunder, although I'm not as experienced with that. And Atlas, ironically, one of the worst developed or mismanaged games ever, has the great ability to just turn that off, which is phenomenal for immersive roleplay. What I want to see in every game, and more or less every game, but certainly both your kind of isometric or your top-down management type games but especially your more immersive oriented games, first and third person, is I want to see a completely HUD off, like immersive mode, but also, and again, I only really just thought about this fully now for World of Warships. They don't do it. It's not a great implementation, but the fact that it's there in World of Warships, you can both turn the HUD off, but you can also, and this is what I would wish other games would give me, some games give you the ability to fly, have your character fly or go invisible or both, right? And that's cool. Like, we were able to get some wonderful cinematics by doing slow motion, by doing slow movement flybys, using the fly mode for my character's avatar in Atlas of things like fireworks going off above our town.
Yeah.
And I was able to do this wonderful video where I'm just like drifting past and that. And the one thing I couldn't do is I couldn't be in that video. I couldn't have my character in that video because I was the camera. World of Warships lets you detach the camera from your object. Yeah. So I can set my ship sailing off in whatever direction, firing torpedoes, whatever I want to do. Control J to turn off the HUD, and then Control Shift backspace to detach the camera. Now the controls then become very clunky, but if you're careful, you can, and methodical, you can manage it, and you can get some wonderful, I mean, that's how they make a lot of their video stuff. You can get some absolutely amazing cinematic stuff. Now, I want that for every single game I play. I want it to not have to be an admin thing or God mode or whatever, creative mode. Yeah. That should be a feature that players can just have access to if whether you're playing solo or you're playing on a server. Maybe on a server it's more difficult, but imagine that, like setting your character and that up in in a Conan or whatever, and being able to do the flybys and stuff like that. Just phenomenal with what you've built or enshrouded or anything like that. So essentially a lot of the tools that the gameplay industry already uses to make its trailers, imagine all the content creators, but just anybody, and all that. We're talking about art now. Imagine the art that could be created by allowing people to move around the world that you've created in that manner. I think it could be phenomenal. We'd see some incredible things. And just quickly, an additional point is, which some games do a degree of. Conan is fairly good, and there's a mod that can make it a little bit better. But NPCs and making your world livable and lived in. So Red Dead Redemption 2 is a good example for that. Being able to have NPCs that effectively go about their life and live in the world. That doesn't apply to all games. Obviously, that applies more to immersive story and especially role-playing scenarios. But I would absolutely adore it if you could have, if developers would think around those terms, rather than it being a small game loop, or like this unit is patrolling this area and has this aggro radius. Think about, what if the knight defending that tower is walking around and then he has his break. He's been there for, in the in-game terms, like 4 hours, and now he has to go and get some food, or there's a changing of the guard and another guard starts walking out from the tower. What if that's your opportunity to stealth through as the rogue? You know what I mean? So that the world feels really, truly alive. And I think that the logic, I hesitate to use the term AI anymore on that, but that kind of NPC logic or whatever, whilst it's probably still incredibly difficult, or seems to be, and that's probably why there's a lack of it in some ways. I think it's been proven that you can do things to a level that, you know, you can still see a difference between an NPC and a player in a lot of scenarios, but Red Dead gets the closest to it, where you can even be a character and you can actually kind of mimic the NPCs a little bit or behave a bit like them, and people wouldn't even know, whoa, there's a player at the end of the bar. You know, if you don't have the HUD on, you're not looking at people's details and stuff like that. You know, I've had that before where somebody's actually sitting at the end of the bar or playing the piano, and 10 minutes later they're like, all right, that's enough of that song, I'm tired now, can I have a whiskey at the bar? And you're like, whoa, that was a player? Holy cow, kudos to you. So, you know, that would be my dream scenario would be, maybe a loose analogy or whatever, but like Westworld, either the movie or the first season of the TV series before it went off the rails and ruined itself. But like that kind of thing, where it's like you don't even know, you know, who's a player, who's an NPC, because the world's just living around you. And we won't be at that level now, and it might be actually incredibly scary, and I might go back on those words if AI really comes to fruition and starts taking over our lives in the games. But I would love to see that kind of thing, and an immersive world, because going back to the dream RP scenario, server setting and all that kind of thing, you know, imagine where you've got a group of 5 or 10 people who might be able to commit to something like that. Imagine being able to populate a reasonably believable, like Red Dead Redemption 2 level of AI, various different villages and settings, and like in Conan, and they all look different and they dress according to the lore and all that kind of stuff, and they're just going about their lives doing their duties. That would be chef's kiss, because then you know, that just adds another level to, and then you could take it to the level of like, well, say there's 10 of you playing and you all split off into like groups of 2 or whatever, and you go to different cities and live out your lives as your characters in these different areas, and you never know who's going to visit from this city in the south to this city in the east, and what their experience is going to be like. It could be, you know, quite amazing. So yeah, that's what I'd look for.
Universally?
I would, I mean, I guess I'm talking more about the kind of games that I get most excited by and drawn into.
Yeah.
It wouldn't apply to all. I think the free, disconnected camera type thing could apply to, you know, most things that have got a traversable sort of 3-dimensional world. I would like to see that feature, together with the HUD being switched off, because I think of video games also as a piece of art, and I think it's nice when people can both admire and appreciate and take in a piece of art and be inspired by it, but also, you know, maybe if they choose to, you know, take that to the next level themselves as well. Like, or again the Red Dead thing where you could sit your character down somewhere or whatever, and then just put or even the riding thing. What they did with the riding camera was amazing, where you could go to cinematic mode, and it would bring in the bars and hide the HUD, and your character, the programming would automatically take your character on the path that you'd set on the map to your next waypoint. That's just genius. So simple. But then your characters would be having an interaction with someone they're riding with, and a story be unfolding. But instead of having to press or hold a button and see all this other game information, you're in a movie. And I think that kind of thing is
rather than showing a game.
Yeah, and I think that is that's something that is very, very special, and it's not a cutscene. It's not the same as a cutscene. Firstly, there's no loading or anything; it's just smooth. But secondly, at any point you can come out of that mode and go carry and like, oh sugar, there's a bear to the left. We hold on to that thought for a minute. Let's just veer off to the right or whatever. Yeah, no, we're going to get mauled, and yeah, chef's kiss on something like that. So I think many games could benefit from something like that. Skull and Bones is interesting because it has a photo mode, which is pretty good. You can hide all the HUD with it, and it has about, I think, 8 or so filters, like a sort of a monochrome-esque, and various other like that deaden or brighten various colors and hues and shades and things. And I think that's pretty cool. But the one thing it's lacking is you're sailing along and you can't just turn the HUD off. You have to go to the photo mode, which means you can no longer control your ship. So you get this great cinematic movie moment where you're panning the camera around and then you run into an island because you can't steer your ship. Like, oh, so close.
No, I can see that. Definitely the ability to not directly explore the world around you with the camera mode, but see it from a different point of view.
Yeah, exactly.
To show it off. That's that should be a goal that more devs want to go for. Show off the world that we're using and living in. And I think that brings us fairly well on to our last little segment of the podcast. Quickly, I want to encourage everyone to jump onto our Patreon, patreon.com/exit2port, and support us there. $2 a month. You are guaranteed to get your comment or question in. But with that being said, we are on to something to smile about, and I'm just going to kick us off here very quickly. Something that I'm smiling very lazily about is the fact that the 3D printer is now working. It is printing well. It's printing consistently. I've started production of the hammer that is going to be coming with me to Germany, as in not just printing it, but also painting it. And I have potentially found a really easy and cool way of bringing the stream with me into my workshop, where I'll be working on these models and such over time. So maybe I'll have my own workshop, not just Hula's workshop. Might be my own workshop too soon. And,
nice.
That just those three kind of clicking together made me happy.
That's awesome.
Made me smile. What's made you smile lately?
What's made me smile is silliness, really, and I'm all for it. Where there's been a trend, shall we say, recently in some circles of people supporting the channel and showing their love by gifting subscriptions. That's nothing new, but they've been doing it in an oddly specific way where they pick a theme or a character or just some circumstance that is prevalent to what's going on, showing that they're not only offering support, which is hugely appreciated and so forth, but they're actually actively paying attention and engaging with you on the content that you're producing or something you're talking about, which is, one of the most respectful and appreciated things you can do for a streamer. And Yeah, there's been a bit of a spate of late. I'm not going to throw anybody under any particular bus or castle or boat or anything. But all I will say is that I've got some probably very surprised, if even active, Twitch accounts such as Wolf's Den, Wolfenheim, and such. Whatever. I don't even know what half of them are anymore, but probably things like Wolves Live Here and this kind of, and it's not just that, but in various ways that where people have just shown their support and appreciation by gifting. And the reason that this has made me smile is not only that it makes me smile and chuckle every single time because it's nonsensical, but I have buckled under the pressure and recently done some gift subs in a couple of other places along this theme. So I'm become a sucker for it, or I've been influenced. And I think both Mr. Texas Hula, although I'm right now my brain's blanking on me, I can't remember. I should have tried to remember and written the name down. But I know what it was. There was a particular joke which tickled him silly regarding a Stegosaurus conversation, and Mistress Mink, who, if you know, she's rather
spicy.
She's not rude, but she's on that lewd borderline that's funny, where you're still on the side that's funny and not on the side that's just, no, you're just being rude now. And she's just very renowned for it. Like everyone in her chat, all the mods, everybody knows. And Hula just, he can be a cheeky chappy, but he's well inside that borderline. And then Mistress Mink comes, like, there's some times in there where I'm like almost blushing on his behalf, and it's like, wow. But it's not bad stuff. It's not it's just funny, but like, wow. And there was one, and she came up with this phrase, something along the, and I don't know if this is a thing or whatever, but she said stego my pego or something like that, and it just happened at a moment, and it caught him. And you know what it's like when you get caught by something, and you're just laughing, and you can't, and the more you think of it and the more you want to like move on, it's not that funny, but you're stuck there and you're sort of weeping tears and all that. And he's trying to work, in his workshop, and it's could be dangerous, so he's trying to concentrate. And that broke him entirely. And I gifted a Twitch sub to something like Mr. Stego's Pego or something. I can't remember exactly what, but it was almost bang on like that, and it was like got him a second time. That made me laugh. And then I got one, been playing some games with Cringer together, and he's got this Jibber Jabber app where it's two like legit, like unique AI things. They're not like mimicking people or whatever. It's like two generated ones called Nigel and Jimmy, and they're arguing with each other and arguing with him, and various things come up the way he is kind of cantankerous with his chat or whatever. And so he was doing this thing, and then a conversation broke out along the lines of like America versus England and coffee and tea and all these kinds of things, right? And so Nigel made this really long, eloquent point coming back at one of Cringe's cheeky jibes about coffee in America and all that, and he went off on this rant about tea. And because Cringe was trying to tease him about tea and why the English drink tea and all the rest of it. So, and after that, I got just the timing right, and I gifted a Twitch sub to somebody called Nigel. So this guy Nigel that he's been arguing back and forth with for 10 minutes, having a good laugh, and chat's laughing and all the rest of it, and it was very amusing. And I gifted a sub to Nigel, and he just looked at the camera as like, "You bastard." And so that's my something to smile about. That I got a couple of my buddies with those in response to the silliness. So it's also a nod of appreciation to various people, some of whom may or may not be in the room virtually right now.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, no, I bet you don't. So no, but I think that's it's pretty funny, and it also, because there's the other level of like when this person sees it, like, I don't know who you are, I've never been here before, but somebody gifted me a sub, so I thought I'd come along and say thank you.
There's been a few times where I've managed to actually summon people to Hello It's Kolos chat as it's happening. And it's always just as much fun when this person goes, "What?
What's going on here?
Why am I here?"
Yeah. Beautiful. So,
you gotta love it. So it's always fun to see what these names are that people come up with. But that's going to be it for us for today. Hopefully, all of you at home have enjoyed what we put out today. I know it's a bit of a longer episode, but just take it in bits and pieces. And without further ado, make sure to take care of yourself. Be as kind to yourself as you are to others. And that's going to be a goodbye from me and a goodbye from Grumbles.
Bye-bye.